Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. I am your host. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, I have Josh Torres.
The impossible happened.
We have Adam Vitale.
Hi.
We have Chow Min Woo.
Hello.
And joining us once again, Mr. James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
Welcome back, James.
So, are you alive? You okay?
Sounds dead inside.
Yeah.
And you're not done yet, right?
Yeah, no, I still have a couple of interviews coming from Anime Expo. Like, there's one I've transcribed that needs to be looked over, and then another one I need to transcribe. And that one should be up either today or tomorrow. So, but yeah, been a busy last couple of months for me, and it's not really slowing down. So,
and just on a podcast front, we've already talked about looking at August and September. It's not slowing down on this front either. So this little gap in July, and I say gap, it's not really much of a gap. It's more just like a small little quiet moment. It's pretty much all we've got until August, and then it feels like it's just pedal to the metal all the way through. So guys, what do you want to talk about? Nothing really happened this week.
I mean, I guess Anime Expo happened with some important things. Then we got, I unexpectedly got access into a closed beta that I can actually talk about too. So, yeah. There's those small things, I guess.
So yeah, we have a couple small things to talk about this week, and we'll take the opportunity to wrap back around to a few game topics over the last couple weeks, because if we don't do it like this week or next, we won't really have a chance, it feels like, for at least a couple months. So that'll probably kind of be the feel of this podcast, is trying to put a bow on things, talk to James about his experience at the Anime Expo, look ahead to what the late summer holds in store, and just kind of go from there. So what Josh is alluding to here, I guess we'll just start out with this, is a game that a few of us have expressed kind of varying degrees of interest over the last year or so, and that is Final Fantasy Ever Crisis. Sorry, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis? What's the full name?
Yeah,
Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. I just wrote Ever Crisis on the spreadsheet here, so I wasn't sure what the full title was. Anyways, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. So this is kind of the Final Fantasy VII compilation spanning entry that was announced a few years back, was originally meant to be in some sort of playable state last year, got kind of delayed, but we're finally at the closed beta this summer for Ever Crisis. And as Josh has stated, he was able to get into it and has put a decent amount of time into it. And he has shared a few of his thoughts over in our staff chat here. And my impression, based on what you've shared just behind closed doors, is that it's been quite a meaty beta, a lot to chew on here with this experience. So how's your time been with Ever Crisis so far?
Yeah, I was really surprised at like how much they showed in this closed beta. It's kind of like it's obviously not represented like the full game, because it's only like still small chunks of, like, say, the original FF7 and Crisis Core. It's not the whole story of those, but it's still like a good chunk of like enjoying all the other modes. It's an interesting experience. I think a lot of it is pretty structurally sound for a mobile game. I think it makes sense in a lot of the decisions that they went through with this. I think by coming away from this, I played a good amount of hours into it, and like pretty much got to experience like almost everything the closed beta has to offer. The only thing I haven't really experienced is the multiplayer part of it, because like the multiplayer is down and it's only up during certain periods of some days. But even when I try to access it, I still can't. So I don't know what's going on with that. But like I think there's a lot of really cool ideas here. Like, for instance, when they first showed off the combat system of Ever Crisis, it looked a lot like FF13 with like an ATB bar gradually filling, and then like you have these commands that'll take up a certain amount of the ATB bar. And the presentation looks a lot like what you used to see from FF13. But so I don't know if they really showed that, but I was really surprised with this like stance switch system in the game, where you have like an offensive stance and a defensive stance that you can switch to pretty much at any time during combat. But like obviously offensive stance will power up your attacks, and defensive stance will not only boost your defense like up to like 30%, and even enhance like your the healing spells that you use in defensive stance, but also like it's to kind of minimize damage during like big attacks that you see coming from enemies, and there'll be like a circular timer that shows a big attack coming, so you can like switch into this stance, and then once you're on the offensive, sometimes like enemies will like put up like a barrier of sorts, and you have to like it'll do like a countdown timer before like it does like a big attack. So you have like a chance to like use certain attacks to like break in and interrupt like the cast time of this big attack during offensive mode. And I don't think that's really been shown before, if I remember correctly.
You were describing that in the staff chat here, and it reminded me either of like just the classic row system, front row, back row, or like you said, Final Fantasy 13, where before a big attack, you'd go into what, like Sentinel like stance, or one of the paradigms that would be defense heavy in order to like minimize damage and then switch out as soon as that's passed.
Yeah.
So I think that's either it wasn't like really explicitly marketed, or it was something that was incorporated a bit later past the initial marketing.
Yeah. So like the combat system has some pretty cool aspects in that. But overall, like I like it because I like, and I'm like the FF7 and FF7 compilation stuff. Not obviously like all of it, but a good enough chunk of it. Like I understand what's going on. I kind of like the way that they're kind of presenting things, because I remember how it is. But I don't know how well this works for like non FF7 fans. Like I don't know if this game, which will be free to play and available to like whether or not you're in FF. Like I don't know if it'll really establish some sort of like resonance with people that like really aren't FF, because it's very very bite-sized chunks, and that's basically a very like abridged version of these stories. So for example, like at the beginning of the FF7 storyline, obviously you have the distraction of Mako Reactor 1. You go do that heist, but it's a very abridged version. It plays the opening cinematic from FF7 remake. You jump off the train. The graphics sort of look like a high res version of like the FF7, the original PS1 FF7 graphics, kind of chibi style. Not as polygonal as like the PS1, but it's still very has like that modern chibi style. And you're running around with fixed camera environments with random encounters, much like the PS1 version. But obviously the map is like kind of a bridge, so you're getting off the train platform, then you're going through the gate, and then you basically have like maybe 2 to 3 like maps till like you're actually entering the reactor itself. Then like when you enter the reactor, you're already going down the ladder to go fight the guard scorpion. So it's not like an intricate map design of like going through the hallways. It's kind of just hitting like the big beats of like what you remember from the map originally. So
it seems like it's more geared to like, hey, you remember this, right? We'll just give you the cliff notes rather than here's a new way to experience the story.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like throughout all this, when you're exploring and doing random encounters, it'll like heal your party after every encounter, so you don't have to really worry about like inventory management, potion management during these like story sequences, and like being story during these story stages. Usually you're like locked to a party, so like at the very beginning it's only Cloud, and then eventually as you move on, you're only locked to like Cloud, Barret, and Tifa. You can't like switch out Tifa for Aerith, or you can't switch out Barret for like Zack or one of the first soldier people, or so you're locked to these parties. Hell yeah. But it's like but even these explorable instances is very limited. Like throughout the whole FF7 story that's presented in closed beta, there's like maybe only 2 of these instances where you can like fully explore a map, because after the Mako Reactor 1 stage, the next story node in this is you're meeting Aerith for the first time. It's the flower scene, and then like after you doing that scene, you're going down the Sector 5 alleyway to fight some soldiers. Then that's done. There's no instance where you're like exploring Sector 5 or anything like that. It's just kind of like a story beat into a battle and then go. And then right after that is just story only cutscenes of you going back to Seventh Heaven. It'll have like that a simple narration before the beginning. It's like, oh, after Cloud escaped, he went back to Sector or Seventh Heaven, which is the hideaway of Avalanche, you know. And then it goes, you get to meet Tifa there, you get to meet Marlene there. An interesting thing is like it's probably just like very very limited in this instance, but you can actually affect this like the story scenes very very slightly here, depending on whether you took the flower from Aerith or not from the previous story node. Because depending on that, whether you took the flower or not, you go to the Seventh Heaven story node, and then you have the option, if you have the flower, to give it to Tifa or Marlene. And then I gave it to Marlene, and then when Barrett comes back, it's a small remark from Marlene saying like, "Oh, Cloud gave me this flower," you know.
I feel
like
kind of
that.
bad because my memory is like, so obviously that's a callback to the original game. I remember in Remake, there's also some decisions made with the flower. But if I recall correctly, once the Ultimania kind of came out, people thought that might have some effects with some like hidden point system or something, because that's very, very classic Final Fantasy. But it just didn't in Remake. Like it didn't really
Mhm.
matter. It was all for flavor, which is not valueless.
Yeah.
Sometimes just having a little bit of roleplay flavor is fine, just inherently. So that's good to know. But I'm also just kind of like, what did it do in the original game? Did it do anything, or was it also for flavor there? I just genuinely don't remember, and I'm like, brain fog. Like, oh, maybe I'll look it up
Yeah.
while you keep chatting. What did the flower do in OG FF7? Did it do anything?
So after the so you have these two story node stages with Seventh Heaven, and then after that talking with Tifa about the next mission, and like Cloud just like is like, I don't really care about the money, pretty much, and you get the flashback of young Cloud and young Tifa on that by the water tower. What's weird about it is after this stage, there's like a sub story, but it's like mandatory to do sub story set of stages where it's just like small stories about Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. So like for example, with Wedge's stage is like dealing with Candy the cat. Jesse is like a weird one where she's like trying to hack into Shinra, and the way to like bypass the hacking is to like virtualize Cloud and Barrett into the system to get past the firewall. Which is like just an excuse to like have a battle, in that stage, pretty much. Then after that, like those three sub stories, it's onto like the destruction of Maker Reactor 5, I think. And then this is like kind of like you I think an explorable stage. Then you deal with Airbuster, and then Cloud falls down into the church. Speaks with Aerith, and you get into the Reno fight, and then that's it for the closed beta portion of FF7. So like it's like about maybe like 7 to 8 like nodes in FF7 to get up to this point. So after after the Reno fight, it ends.
It's interesting to think about, because in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's like, oh, that's half the story. Original FF7, it's like, oh, that's like the first 3 hours, 4 hours. That's kind of old hat. And I remembered, or not remembered, I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, duh, of course that's what it was. The flower in the original game was for a hidden counter for the dating sequence at Golden Saucer. Like the person that you ride the Ferris wheel with, and things like that. Oh, yeah, that's what that was.
Oh. And then after that, you unlock Crisis Core story. So not all the like you have to unlock like each series like sequentially in this closed beta. So after you do FF7, you unlock Crisis Core. This one's a bit more tricky to get through because you're only locked to Zack. Zack is obviously it's a solo game, so you only have Zack to work with. So you have to make sure he's kitted out pretty properly to kind of do everything and hit weaknesses. But same thing. You kind of go through the beginning intro of Crisis Core. Then you get through what is supposed to mimic the original scenes of F7 until it's like the training room, and then you kind of get some story beats as you talk to Angeal. Then you go the big story sequence in here is like the fully explorable stage is like the Fort Tamlin stage, and then at the end like there's some even like very slight like exploration elements where you can like There are like highlighted parts of the wall where you can like kind of do shortcuts as you're going through like turnable walls. And then at the end of that, you meet young Yuffie, and you fight against those two like big things. I forgot what they're called off the bat. Then Angel bails you out on the final one, and then so forth until you get to the fight with Ifrit or Ifrit. You fight Ifrit, and then you learn about the Genesis copies, and then that's the end of that story. Then you unlock the first soldier, and the first soldier is really weird because I've never played the first soldier. I didn't even know there's a story beyond the opening cutscene of the first soldier. So you see that stuff, and then the helicopter that Glenn, Matt, and Lucia are on gets shot down, and then Glenn and Lucia are on their own. Like, they kind of crash land into this place. They don't know where they are. They're trying to look for Matt. And then there's like creatures that they're running into as they're searching for Matt. You reconvene with Matt, and then eventually you meet with another person, and then you kind of fight off another threat. And then that's the end of the first soldier, pretty much. And there's like an explorable stage in there too that I don't know if it's like this is a thing you do in the first soldier or not. Because my recollection is like you see that opening cutscene, then you do the battle royale shit. I don't actually know if there's like story stuff in the first soldier at all.
If you are aware of the story of the first soldier, please let us know, educate us, put it in the comments.
Right, pretty much.
Well,
right?
And not related for soldier, I have not yet played the Crisis Core remaster from last December, and like I played the PSP version, but it's been so long that I literally remember just like how it ends, which is like the thing that everyone knows even if they haven't played it. So like maybe I'll just play it in Ever Crisis and be like, is this a good refresher or not? And my guess is it's like maybe not.
It's it's definitely like if you're familiar with it already, it's like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing, but I imagine you'd want like the proper experience, right? Unless you really hate slots, and then you're just like, I'd like to play another game with a different kind of slots to get so I don't have to deal with the what was it called, like the DMV system? I forget what it's called. Digital Mind Wave.
Just call it a slot machine.
So teach us
BMW. I think in California.
Well, teach us about the new slots, the slots of Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis.
Yeah, so as people, there's a mobile game. It does have a gacha element to it. It reminds me a lot of like Opera Omnia in its structure and how the gacha is done. The story stages that I mentioned don't consume stamina at all, but there is a stamina system for like when you're grinding like weapon mats, and other sorts of like stages that you grind on. But in this game you're rolling for weapons like in Opera Omnia. There's a 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star version of weapons, and then obviously the 5-star rate for SSRs is 7.5%, which is fairly above average relatively to most other kinds of games. But the caveat is there's like a large pool of them of weapons, because every weapon has a 5-star version, at least in like the standard weapons that you get. On the flip side, that also means there is like in-game ways to like upgrade the rarity of these weapons. So like when you get like dupes of weapons, when you roll those, they get converted to weapon tickets of that particular weapon. And when you reach like say 10 weapon tickets for the Buster Sword, you can upgrade it to 4-star rarity from 3-star. And then once you get 200 weapon tickets for the Buster Sword, you can upgrade it to 5-star rarity. And this will obviously upgrade stats, and then it'll actually unlock like enhanced versions of like the ability that's on them. So let's say like the 3-star and 4-star Buster Sword have like an ability called Fast Blade, and then once it reaches the 5-star version, it'll enhance Fast Blade to Braver, and that's kind of the key value to like the weapons is, they all come with their own ability attached to them. There are some 5-star SSR weapons that are limited to the gacha only, like the current banners like Cloud's Murasame and Barrett's Micro Laser weapon, and these cannot be obtained through standard means. They have to be rolled for in there. It's kind of a weird thing what they're doing with this. it's neat, but also I don't know. It's kind of weird. Where these limited banners have like stamp cards associated to them. So let's say I go to the banner with the Cloud and Barrett's weapon that I just mentioned. It'll have a stamp card on them, and it's kind of like almost like mileage points, where every time you do a 10 pull, not a single pull, it has to be a 10 pull, you have a chance, usually of either getting one stamp, sometimes getting two stamps, rarely three stamps, and on a 1% chance of getting 12 stamps on it. Because on this stamp card, that like these are pretty much like almost like the pity of this game. Like when people talk about pity and mobile gacha games, it's like basically rolling like a certain amount to eventually reach a point where you like the game finally kind of gives you what you want.
It gradually tilts the RNG, or maybe not gradually, maybe firmly, or whatever the opposite is. Puts the RNG in your favor.
Yeah. So like, say the sixth stamp on like reaching the stamp card is it'll guarantee you either Cloud's or Barrett's weapon, and you can manually choose which one you want on this like sixth stamp reward. So, and you can toggle it at any time. So let's say I do a 10 roll, and I get two stamps, and I get Cloud's weapon. I'm like, oh, okay, I got Barrett's weapon next, so I'll switch that six stamp reward on the stamp card to Barrett's weapon. So when I eventually reach it, I'm guaranteed it if I don't have it yet. And then at the 12th stamp is a new costume for Cloud that will not only obviously change up his look, but it has like substats attached to it as well. So like getting like new costumes is valuable if you want like the substats on them, and that's the 12 stamp reward. So if you want that costume, you'll have to keep on doing 10 rolls on this banner to keep on getting stamps, and you maybe get lucky and get like 3 stamps or 12 stamps at once based off like a single 10 roll on that. And then along each of these stamp nodes, kind of getting like goodies too. You're getting like in-game money. You're getting like weapon materials to enhance your weapons and stuff along the way. So it's kind of like getting prizes as you're rolling as well. So it's like another RNG on top of like the RNG that you're doing with each 10 roll for getting weapons. And also along with this system, there's like you can like wish list like up to like 6 weapons that you want, and like if you want like certain weapons for like Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Zack, and Glenn, you can like actually like wish list like certain weapons that you're aiming for, and then these weapons have an enhanced probability to be rolled in like each 10 roll that you're doing, or each roll that you're doing as well on this banner. So like you have like 3 to 4 different systems like in like the gacha banners that's going on. Like it makes sense once you understand it, but it's like kind of a lot at the beginning to like kind of wrap your head around, because it's kind of like combining like several gacha game systems into one.
So one thing that I think I've been following pretty closely. One thing I wasn't quite sure is, are some of the rewards, like the costume you mentioned, exclusive to the stamp? Like you have to work your way up through the stamp card to get the Cloud costume, or can you also get it from the banner through RNG?
Yes, it's only through the stamps. You can only get it through reaching it through stamps. There's because everything that you roll in the game is only weapons. Nothing else will show up besides weapons.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and then there's also another banner as well for like that's first soldier focus, or like Glenn, a new outfit. If you want, but who's no one's gonna roll for that banner. No one's gonna roll on that banner. Everyone wants a fucking Cloud
I
samurai costume. All right,
just to be a hipster.
Yeah. The Glenn outfit, it looks like a Leon special outfit from Resident Evil 4, the one that has like the tuxedo and everything. That's what it looks like. So actually, like building out your characters and party is a pretty interesting prospect in this game, because you have a party of 3 in this game, and like the amount of things that they kind of bolt onto characters is like kind of a lot at first. So once you get to like the character customization screen, you have their main weapon, of course. that main weapon, of course, is gonna account for like their main attack stats on that weapon and like the main ability on that weapon. Additionally, you can equip a sub weapon on them, which will be one of the other weapons that you have rolled for them, and the main use for a sub weapon is you're getting like the ability from them. You're adding the ability that they do onto like your main attack bar as well. So let's say I have the Buster Sword that has Braver, and then I can equip like say let's say I'll equip Cloud's Murasame as a sub weapon. Now I have like the Thunder Step or whatever, the Thunder Strike sub ability on my command bar on Cloud now, because I have that weapon equipped on the sub thing. I can and I can also just flip it around too. I can have like the Murasame as the main weapon, and I still have the Thunder Strike, but I now have like that that weapon's stats as like my main attack and stat modifiers, and have the Buster Sword be my sub weapon, and also have Braver available to me because it's now equipped as a sub weapon.
So one of them becomes your stat stick, and one of them becomes like your ability stick.
Yeah, sort of, but you're still getting them like the ability from like the main
Yeah.
weapon as well. So you have like up to 2 like weapon abilities equipped on you at any given time. Then like to so that's like 2 of your 5 like like abilities on your characters, like kind of like moves that they can do, because they do the basic attack on their own, and the thing that you manage is like these abilities based on ATB. Then you have 3 materia slots that you can equip onto them, and those account for like the rest of the 3 commands. So I can equip a fire materia, a blizzard materia, a thunder materia, and so Cloud will just have fire, blizzard, and thunder available to him also in battle, along with these 2 weapon abilities. So that's kind of like an interesting way to kind of kick your characters and make them like maybe synergy or chemistry along with each other. Like let's say I want everyone to at least have like 1 cure material on them, so at any time no one is like has any health issues or like or has the inability to heal on them. So you have the main weapon, sub weapon, 3 materia. Then here's like the kind of the main kind of like quote unquote stat sticks a little, where there's like another tab on character outfitting characters where it's like you can equip like additional equipment onto them, and these aren't character locked. So let's say I have 2 slots to equip other weapons onto them, and I could equip like any Barrett weapon and any Red 13 weapon on them. And what you're getting from these weapons primarily that you're equipping is not necessarily their abilities or their stats, but it's like the sub skills that are on them. So the Barrett weapon that I equip might have like a physical strength up, and the Red 13 weapon might be a healing potency up on them. So now when I equip these, Cloud will have increased strength, physical strength, and his heals will be more potent because of the weapon that from Red 13 that I equipped onto him in this kind of like secondary gear category on that. So there's a lot going on when you're kind of expecting out, and then you're doing all this stuff for like 3 characters in like a main party. So there's a lot of like flexibility on like what sorts of like things what sort of synergy you want to go for, and also accounting for like what weaknesses you want to target on like any certain boss, because like like in any RPG, targeting weaknesses is good, like because it's increased damage, but it's also doubly good in this game because of like those certain windows when like the enemy's like casting a big attack. You want to hit like their weaknesses to like kind of bring down that counter and interrupt that attack as well. So I don't know if that made a lot of sense, but there's just like a lot going on.
What I've mostly gleaned from it is that secondary equipment slot is very like versatile, in terms of what mechanically its purpose can serve.
Yeah, because as you're upgrading weapons, like those sub abilities that they have, like they'll they'll eventually learn more sub abilities after they reach a certain like level. So there's like value in upgrading, doing horizontal like progression, and like trying to eventually level up like different types of weapons that might not be your main weapon because you'll want these sub abilities on like certain characters in the long run, and stuff like that. So I'll, all the battle stuff that I've told you about sounds cool on paper, and it's pretty cool when you're like manually doing them. The weird part is auto battle just does everything better than you in this game. It's like very optimized to like. So let's say when you turn on auto battle, there's like two modes. There's like semi, which is like it'll cast like um like it'll just cast like your abilities on your characters when you have the proper ATB, and semi is like whatever. But then when you go like full auto in this game, it'll also automate like um stance switching as well. And auto battle already just like hits weaknesses on its own um when your characters are equipped and have weaknesses on them, they'll just spam weaknesses because basically that's what you want, aside from healing. So going full auto, it'll do everything. It'll heal you when you're low on HP. It'll stance switch you at like right at the precise time, like the boss is about to do a big attack. So full auto will just optimize damage for you right till the last second before it does a big attack. Then it'll do the stance switch, and it'll just do everything pretty much. So right now, from what I played, there's very little reason to get off auto battle and then 2 times speed, because auto battle will just kind of do everything on its own pretty much perfectly, and obviously 2 times speed will just make battles go faster so you can continue to do more content in your play session.
When I was playing Near Reincarnation for about like a month,
Mhm.
I think the biggest like paradigm shift for me getting into this style of game that this is reminding me of is the auto battle in that game actually like had a mode that was deliberately just to conserve battery on your phone. I forget, like an efficiency mode where like lower the frame rate, make it really choppy. Because it seemed like the intent was, if you're playing this game for real, you will be doing a lot of auto battling because you need to, but we don't want to tax the hardware, so we will literally give you an option to do this repeatedly at a lower fidelity. So basically, I don't like that. That's my only foray, and I don't want to try to extrapolate too much. It just seems like when you tell me that auto battle, it seems like almost the intended way to play, which is not unheard of. You have a game where a lot of the player input is scheming your party and your attributes and your configuration, and like you're making sure that you're geared appropriately, and then you roll and see how that stacks up against whatever the game's throwing at you, rather than input or reaction or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's because it's a mobile game in nature, right? Like it'll become tedious, like inevitably, to like have to manually do everything. So I kind of like I get it on that aspect, because I'm no stranger to mobile games. I know how these go. So like it's probably like probably a good decision in the long run, but it kind of feels weird because like the game, like the only player input that no matter what will not be automated is like when you use limit breaks. When you use limit breaks in the game, like it'll have like a flashing yellow icon, and it'll not automate those. You always have to like manually decide when you do them, and you'll want to chain limit breaks as well because they have like better modifiers. So like say, um, I have Barret, Cloud, and Tifa, and they'll have their limit breaks up. There's a way to like just tap on all three of those glowing yellow things, and it'll chain them, and it'll have like a higher attack modifier the later the limit break is. So let's say like Barret does his, then like at a standard ×1 modifier, then like at a 1.25 modifier, it'll do Tifa's somersault, and then at a 1.5 like attack modifier, it'll be Clouds at the very end if you use those at the end. So like there is like some sort of player agency of like where do you want to get like your big DPS window, when do you want to initiate that, as everything else kind of like automating itself. But it's ultimately it's kind of like it's kind of a preordained numbers game, where if you have the proper party configuration, you should be successful. If you don't, then like no matter how much auto does for you, it'll try its best. You'll still probably fail, and like maybe some manual tinker you can like kind of brute force through that with like kind of waiting it out and like doing stuff on your own and like maybe pushing through it like that. But it's more likely an issue of like your party setup more so than like a command issue,
Right.
you know.
So once
So
you play through in the beta, you've mentioned like there's different stories will force stop you at certain points. Like when you go back to the game, like if you were to boot up your beta access now, what is like the repeatable mission structure? You've already played through like the bombing mission story mode or whatever you want to call it. If you want to like just like what's the repeatable gameplay past the story, like with the stamina based gameplay?
so you have your standard like weapon enhancement stages where you can like grind nodes for like materials to upgrade your weapons. You also need certain materials like steel and iron to uncap their levels on weapons, because like every weapon that you get has a weapon, an additional weapon limit of or level of 20, and then you'll need like say like 10 iron to increase its weapon level uncapped to 50. So you'll have to do those. There's also the tower that unlocks after you finish the first soldier, and it's your standard like tower style in like gacha games where like you as you progress through the tower, fights will get tougher, and the rewards you get from the tower are like these character shards um after each battle, and you actually unlock like a character growth feature after the first soldier as well, where like each character has like a it looks like a skill tree, but it's more like a tree for like standard stats. So like if you go into like the first node, it'll be attack +7. So you spend one character shard to unlock this attack +7 node, and then it'll branch off. And then do you want to take this path to like heal +7, which will enhance their healing potency, or do you want to go towards this other branch that'll increase their max HP and stuff like that? So that's another way to like kind of gradually like grow your characters and make them more powerful, is like this sort of like passive stat tree almost. You also have one of the coolest modes in this game is a thing called Criterion Dungeons, and these Criterion Dungeons are basically almost like remixes of like the fully explorable areas that you do, where it doesn't change up like the map layout, but it changes up like the enemy layout of them. So let's say I go to the Criterion Dungeon of Maker Reactor 1, and there's no story locks on here. You can do whatever sort of like party do you want. If you want like Tifa, Lucia, and Zack, and sure, go for it. If you want Barrett, Red 13, and Glenn, go for it. uh and to be clear, like the only characters available in this closed beta are Cloud, Barrett, Tifa, Aerith, Red 13, Zack, and the three first soldier characters, is Glenn, Matt, and Lucia, and those are the only characters available in this closed beta. So you go to this criteria dungeon, and you're running around, and there are these glowing markers like showing that like there's like a boss here. Like these are called symbol encounters, and like you go into them, and you kind of, and like your strategy doesn't really change up from like how you first fought them. So like one of the bosses will be like guard scorpion. You kind of beat it up the same way. But the thing here is like every damage that you take in this mode, a certain percentage of your max life will decrease. So let's say your character gets hit for like 100 damage. That might mean that like 5% of their max life will permanently decrease for the duration of this Criterion dungeon. So there's sort of like a survival element to it, because you
like a long-term attrition of sorts.
Yeah. So, but there are treasure chests like that have like supplements that will heal like 20% back of like your max HP. It won't heal your HP, but it'll heal back like the potential max HP that you lost. I know, and then eventually you'll come across like one treasure chest that has like 4 potions in it, so you have to be kind of like, you can't dawdle around too much in this dungeon. But then there are sometimes like in these like Criterion dungeons, there's like kind of like secret encounters. So like in the Maker Reactor 1, if you instead of like going, if you were like the T-shaped like hallway to get into the reactor, instead of that T-shaped hallway, where instead you would go the other way where Wedge was. Instead of like where Wedge is no longer there, there's like a door that like you can't get through, but you run up to that door and it initiates like a secret random encounter against a Cactuar, and like this Cactuar is kind of like beefy, and you kind of need to beat it in like a certain amount of time before it flees. And you want to beat this Cactuar because it has a nice drop reward of like 300 blue crystals, which is gacha currency, but also because these are sub objectives as well that'll count towards the full completion of the Criterion dungeon. And you can always come back and like redo the Criterion dungeon again if you didn't like finish all the sub objectives. So it's kind of like neat little exploration elements like that, and also a little bit of survival elements that kind of give like the game a sort of like different kind of challenge, and instead of just like like hitting out your party in a certain way, it's like they're trying to reward you for like exploration and like being thorough about like completing these Criterion dungeons.
I'm trying to think. Was it
Mhm.
James? Do you remember the Criterion dungeons in Final Fantasy XIV?
He went and talked about those previously. Yeah, I was actually going to think like that's the same thing they were called in 14, right?
Yeah, it sounds very similar to it. I didn't really do it. That's why I'm just like having a hard time to kind of relate the experience. But I remember James did. That's why I was like wondering if he did it, and maybe if this comparison would sound similar. But since he's not really here, I
Well,
can't
no,
really.
I'm here. It's like I did some of the. I'm not sure if like the base version is variant or Criterion. I forget, but I did like like the first one, and I guess the second one is coming out any week now. Like it might be next week actually, because it's been like a month and a half or thereabouts since 6.4. But yeah, it's like yeah.
Yeah. These were neat. There's also another feature called Crisis Dungeons that I don't know if like it's available in closed beta or not, but it's kind of locked out to me right now. I'm not exactly sure what those are, but those are different types of dungeon as well. But I mean, aside from the story stuff, a lot of the game is just like kind of like grinding and building up your party to kind of get past the next hurdle. So like right now, my current strongest party is a little over 30k in power, and the next tower floor it had like not requires but recommends a power level of 32k. Not that I need to reach it, but eventually, I'll keep on doing content. Eventually I'll come across a wall, and then I'll have to like kind of do the daily grind of like powering up their weapons, powering up their materia, getting them to like a certain spot where like I can finally overcome like the next wall in front of me, and then eventually, I'll have to wait for like content updates that for the dev team to add like maybe new chapters to Crisis Core, or maybe new stuff to FF7, or do First Soldier, and whenever they decide to add like Dirge of Cerberus and Before Crisis storylines. So I feel like that's gonna be the loop of the game, is like as you're waiting for like these new FF7 compilation story chapters, you're kind of just doing like kind of that daily grind that you kind of do in every mobile game, where you kind of need to do your dailies or weeklies, doing your being vigilant about doing the tower stuff, and just like kind of slowly, you know, powering up what's available to you and whatever you've drawn for the gacha as well.
You know that meme, like I think it's a tweet, where it's like person that's only seen Boss Baby. I'm getting Boss Baby vibes from this. Like that's what I kind of get, only having only played Near Reincarnation. Just the way you describe the missions having like a recommended power level, the way you need certain numbers of materials to uncap your weapons. I'm like, yeah, this rings a bell. I saw this once
Uh-huh.
before.
Yep.
And then my one exposure to
Yeah.
this sort of game.
Yeah.
Like, all right, it'll
No,
so people like who have played multiple of these sorts of games, seems like it's going to be sort of like I don't know, but par for the course. But doesn't sound like anything that will surprise them. Except
Yeah,
maybe
I
the
mean,
stamp system sounds a bit kind of, based on what you've described, it sounds like that stamp system is the part that seems like the most unique.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen similar systems with other gacha games, like Princess Connect had a very similar system during prize reward periods during that.
Mm,
Um, so it's not like the most unique system in the world, but it is an interesting implementation of it because of like how you know they had like this the FF7 IP, not just FF in general, but FF7 alone in isolation, like has such like a big fan following, a loyal following, right? So a lot of people are probably going to get suckered into the stamp card system because you just know eventually they'll come out with a stamp card, and that 12th stamp will be the Cowgirl Tifa outfit. And you know what? People are gonna fucking pay loads to get to that Cowgirl Tifa outfit, come hell or high water. You know. Um, I mean,
I was, I was, I was, I was
am I
thinking like an
wrong?
advent. I was thinking like an advent.
Okay.
Children outfit.
Here's a dark secret. I was only able to beat Final Fantasy 13-2 when they have a bikini DLC on sale for Sarah. That was it.
See. I mean, the fucking system works.
And then there's Adam, who played all of Final Fantasy 13-2 with the Mass Effect crossover. Remember that?
Oh hell yeah, that's awesome.
Noah and Sarah, or not Noah, Noel, and
Yeah,
Sarah wearing the N7 armor the entire game.
That's awesome.
So.
But yeah, I mean but I mean that's kind of the gameplay loop of the game in general, right? So I mean it'll be really interesting to see how if this game will have legs in the long run, and like I guess it'll really all come down to like how often they update this game, like what the content updates will be like, if it's gonna be monthly, and if it's gonna be monthly, how much content are you gonna expect, and then what events are gonna look like in this game, what will a summer event look like in this game, what will a Christmas event look like in this game, um, and all sorts of stuff like that. It also will depend on a lot of people are obviously gonna like pay to like roll in this game, but I think a lot of like fans will, a good chunk of people will just want to play this and not spend any money on it. So I think a lot of it is going to come down to like what they're, yep, how often are they gonna, how generous are they gonna be about like the currency in this game? Like how often are they gonna give that? Because by its very nature, you're gonna need to roll a lot because you'll want to like upgrade these weapons and like get them to like a good state. Like even like 4-star weapons are valuable, like because when you roll a four-star weapon of a weapon that you already have, it'll automatically upgrade the rarity of it, and you also want like a vast array of weapon options to push through content because of like the sub ability system. So you don't like, and there'll be cases like during the story, like Crisis Core, for example, where you'll need to like have a pretty powered up Zack to push through because like he's on his own, and you kind of need that Zack to do everything to push through that story. So and by its very nature of like you're switching parties constantly because of different FF7 compilation storylines, they'll need to like allow players who don't spend a cent on the game to still advance these at a comfortable pace because they'll have to build up a vast array of characters. They can't just like stick to one party and then expect that for that to cruise you through the game because of the story, how the story is handled. You'll have to constantly be using story locked parties that have like set configurations, but it'll still account for like what weapons the player has rolled for them and stuff like that.
And I was reminding myself, like, did this game have it? Like, I'm on iPhone, so I can't play this without emulating it or whatever in the beta, anyways. So I was trying to remind myself if an official release date was announced, and no, just the beta dates going on right now, and then commitment to 2023, and that's it so far.
So we'll see. I don't know really what to. I'll give it a shot because I actually do enjoy like kind of the loop of it. I just don't like, but it's a very like it's your standard like honeymoon period for like a mobile gacha game where you'll feel good at the very beginning because they give you so much stuff, and like especially this closed beta period where like they're a lot more generous than I assume what would probably be the full version of the game, because in this closed beta period, like every new day, every new reset on daily, they'll give you enough currency to do a 10 pull, so you get 3,000 crystals just for free, and also to celebrate your own words in the in-game message when you accepted this, to celebrate positive reception of the closed beta test. They gave you 30 weapon, there are 30 draw tickets as well. Which I imagine none of the progress that I made in the closed beta will carry over to the full game. Everything will be wiped when it's over. But I imagine, these things that I expect, these rewards that I got in the closed beta, they're not going to be that generous in the full game. They're not going to give you a full 10 pool currency, every single day. They won't give you 30 fucking draw tickets because of the positive reception, in the final game. I imagine. So I'll be really interested to see like what is their like kind of like their normal loop of like what they're giving out. Then they have their pre-registration stuff going, and I saw the rewards on that. It's like it's okay. It's probably gonna be it's probably gonna be like a decent game to re-roll on, honestly. But yeah, well, we'll see. A lot of this is kind of like there's something here. There is something cool about like kind of splitting the difference between like all the different art styles that like FF7 has gone through, kind of like with the chibi stuff and the fixed camera and the fixed backgrounds, like sort of reminiscent of the PS1 era. But then you have like when significant characters are like talking with each other, you kind of have like this stylized art portrait for the characters that seem like really cool with like thick outlines that you haven't really seen before in FF7. And then when you go into battle, it's like all the high def model stuff that you've seen like in remake. And it's kind of unify like and celebrate all the different art styles that FF7 has gone through and how that will affect other FF7 compilation stuff as well. Like for example, like kind of in the first soldier, the explorable area that you have is kind of like a shoreside beach area that's like pretty nice visually. It has a really nice color palette, open blue sky, and then it's all leading toward like an area that's like full of like kind of like sakura blossoms, lots of like cherry trees. It looks very, very pretty, like that environment. And like that's really cool to see like come to fruition in this game. And it makes me really interested to see like how other FF7 locales and how other FF7 compilation series like look in this game. What will Dirge of Cerberus look like? What will Before Crisis look like? And other sort of stuff like.
Well, we'll keep some tabs on Ever Crisis, and we don't know when it's going to come out, but sometime this year, and will be interesting to see exactly how the game launches and what the post-release plans look like, because it seems like they've shifted a bit from how it was initially announced based on James's preview from a few weeks back. It sounds like, James, remind me, they're planning to do like a series of regular like monthly updates.
Yeah. And at least they told me that the main story of the original Final Fantasy VII, like obviously abridged in the way they're doing it, should be available at launch. That's what they told me. So let's see.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how that all shapes up and see how. Like, yeah, I'm really interested to like if it's like how does that translate into like the pacing of this game? Like, I'll be like I'm interested and we'll report back. Like I will just give this game a generous, honest shot because it's so weird. It's a very weird thing, and it's weird enough for me to go like, yeah, I think I'll go through it. I'll invest. I'll definitely take the time to, explore around it, and then be sad when like my cool party lineup of like Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith. It's like my main party with like 5-star weapons, and then man, Barrett got his 5-star weapon for me too. But like, oh man, I'm gonna be sad when I lose my account. I'm really gonna be sad when I lose my closed account.
Well, sometimes weird things stay weird, but sometimes weird things end up being really good. So we'll keep tabs on Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis and see if it has staying power. And Josh's time with the closed beta of Ever Crisis was really the only new game experience for this week. So we're going to go into wrapping up a few thoughts from some games from some previous weeks, starting with what was our headliner last week, where we brought on George Ying to talk about Trails into Reverie. So the rare occasion where the embargo released a little over a week past the actual release date. So Trails into Reverie officially released in the West yesterday as the time of recording. And at the time of last week's recording, George Yang had put up his review, and over at IGN, please give it a thumbs up if you appreciated it. And then over the last week, I put up my review in Trails into Reverie. It pretty much just echoes my thoughts that I kind of gave last week. But since the game is now officially released on console, I played it on PC. James was mentioning a few things that he had either witnessed himself or had heard about regarding the console release about Trails into Reverie that you wanted to talk about here.
Well, I didn't actually want to talk about it too much, but long story short, it's not just the console release, it's also the PC version. There's a number of bugs going around where, to be frank, if you're planning on playing this, I would actually suggest waiting like a week or two for a patch, because one of the issues is that any of the characters that weren't in Cold Steel 4, their link levels are just completely broken right now. Like, just completely broken. And there's some fish where if you fish them up, it'll just crash the game.
Oh my god. No.
When James was talking about this, like, I feel kind of maybe silly because I hate to just say what works on my machine or whatever, because I did have a couple crashing issues, but it was when I was like doing the high speed super skip through cutscenes. And I was just thinking like, oh, maybe I just shouldn't do that. I should just watch the cutscenes. And to be clear, this would be like if I'm refighting a boss fight or something like that. But I didn't have any crashes due to like fish issues. I did notice a few like typos in some of like the non-voice script. I know some people had brought up some concerns with the way certain locations were translated, but I just didn't have like the knowledge of what it was originally known as in the fandom to make that comparison.
To be completely clear here, nobody in AS America wanted these issues to be in the game. Don't harass people. The fact I have to say this after what happened at Anime Expo, don't harass people.
And I saw something like a bug where I guess like as typical in these games, you upgrade, crafts and S crafts throughout. And apparently some of the updated S crafts weren't actually doing more damage. And I'm like, oh, I'm not surprised I didn't catch that because like that's kind of in the weeds. And a lot of times when you do an S craft, like the enemy's dead or they're just about dead. So hopefully some of the little mechanical tweaks in the battle system and making sure that the link levels work and the crafts are tearing up to where they're supposed to get addressed shortly.
Yeah. So one thing I will say that's notable about Trails into Reverie's release is that this is the first time that NIS America has released a Trails game that wasn't like Trails from Zero, Trails into Azure, that they've released it on multiple platforms. Like they've released it on PS4, PS5, PC, and Switch. And the thing you have to understand about that is that like drastically increases the amount of like QA time you need to allot for a project, especially with a game like Trails, which has so much text and so many moving parts. Not to mention the fact that like they have VR components in the PS4, PS5, and PC versions of the game that you have to test. It's just they might have bit off more than they can chew. It might have been a better idea if they'd stuck with the thing they did with Cold Steel 3 and 4, where they released it on PlayStation first and then ported it to other platforms. Because it seems like, I guess they eventually wanted to like just rip that Band-Aid off and have things be simultaneous. But from what we're seeing, obviously there has been some growing pains, and
I think it's fine to have like hopefully they do fix it ASAP, obviously. But I don't think it like the going back to the old way of releasing things would like that's not necessarily like the most optimal thing to do. It's like one of those things like, oh well, the if we did this the first time, then that means we should go back to the old way because that wouldn't have happened. It's like not necessarily like. I'm just not a fan of like, oh, it's like we stumbled into these things that we have to go back. Is like, I don't know. I think it's just like kind of learning from the experience, taking that into account into like the production pipeline, and like
it's like
tightening things up. Like the transition to these things isn't always easy. I think it's one of those things like you just kind of learn these lessons as you move forward. Because obviously you want like the best experience for people on day one for the most amount of people. Because obviously you have a lot of fans from different platforms waiting for this eagerly. Because everyone knows all across the board, all across the spectrum, that we're still in this catch-up game, and we'd really like to be on par where Japan is with these games. So kind of making that wait longer for certain people is like not always the greatest decision too.
Yeah, and people are like, I'm not going to like sit and tell people that they should be happy about these issues, and it is frustrating when I mean, unfortunately, NIS America does have a history with stuff like this, and it makes sense that people might be less inclined to be patient or understanding of issues when they pop up. When it's like, we've all heard about the stuff of like Art Tenelico on the PS2, where it's like, this boss after 3 turns will crash the game if you don't kill it in time. It's just
it's like one of those things is like if this company can survive like a string of issues that couldn't be patched back then, they'll make it through. It's okay.
Yeah,
you know, we'll be fine. Just like obviously, you know, like James said it earlier, but just like don't give the developers shit for this. You know, like they know it. They've heard the feedback. They're gonna work on it. You don't need to like get on their asses about it. They know they want to make the best experience for people. You don't need to fucking harass them. That doesn't help anybody. Like if you really like just sit down and sit for 2 seconds and just think about it, like who does this help? It kind of helps no one. And you just get more mad like during the process too. Like it doesn't help you and it doesn't help them. So if it doesn't help anyone, then why do it?
The only thing I can really contribute is just like, maybe I'm not as observant as other people, but I kind of feel like in Cullen's shoes, I'm talking about Final Fantasy 16, how he didn't really notice the motion blur issues, which have been fixed since then. More on that later. But like I had the couple crashes when I was trying to like hyper speed through cutscenes, but I didn't have like, my experience was not marred by technical issues. I would just state it that way. On PC, if you're playing on Switch, maybe they're more prevalent. I'm not sure. But yeah, like I did not have like some sort of terrible time. I've played far worse PC ports because this is obviously still PH3, who in general does pretty damn good job.
So. Yeah, especially if you want, like if you're not gonna trust Anissa, then trust in Durante. You know, come on. Like I think Durante has earned it well above that. Him and his company just, you know, they produce some of the finest fucking ports in the business. So, you know, give them some slack. You know, they've earned it.
All right, I really didn't have any other thoughts on Reverie at the moment. I do have the written review up on the site. So last week we had the IGN review that we pointed to from George Jang. Now it's up on RPG site as well. Maybe we'll just leave it at that. The other game, so obviously I spent most of this last couple weeks playing through Reverie. Last week when we talked, I was basically in the final stretches of the game. This week I was playing through the final bits of the Reverie corridor, getting up the review, getting all the post-game stuff out of the way. And I've been returning to Final Fantasy 16, specifically the hard mode, the Final Fantasy mode, the New Game Plus mode that unlocks after beating the game. So when we last talked about Final Fantasy 16, it was on release week, and we had a few people who had played, like me and Josh at the time had played a significant portion of the game, and James as well, and then Cullen had completed the game. I believe I have that all stated correctly.
Yeah,
but Cullen had just about started, but did not dive into, because of course he had just marathoned it. No, of course, the Final Fantasy mode of the game, and talking about how obviously it uncaps the level cap, it shifts around the enemy positioning, it gives you different sorts of resources. It seemed like it'd be like, wow, this has the potential to be something quite neat. Like maybe something, we talked about how the base game was quote unquote lacking in like RPG elements. It had a very strange level of resource management, things like that. We thought maybe these are things that can be fixed in the Final Fantasy mode. And plus, I'm a sucker. I want to get the platinum trophy anyway. So I've been playing through the Final Fantasy mode because you have to do that in order to do it. And even though I've been enjoying my playthrough of the game, it's fun to start, do the initial battles with like all the icon abilities and things like that. You can finally start getting enough attribute points to unlock a lot of like the final abilities to be able to spam like Giga Flare and Diamond Dust and the Phoenix Rebirth. So you can finally have enough ability points to spec into all of those. I will say that the Final Fantasy mode doesn't really change a whole lot. It doesn't shake It's not a world shaker. How it ends up working once you start diving through it is like, yes, it's tiering up. Like you're getting different materials in order to craft like a higher tier of weapons, but it's very straight line. Any quest, I've been going through our quest guide and our hunt guide and seeing like what they used to reward you on the first playthrough and what they reward you in the second playthrough. If before it gave you a meteorite, which is like a crafting upgrade, now it gives you a flawless meteorite. Like it's just one tier up.
Oh,
If before it gave you 20 sharp fangs, now it gives you 40 sharp fangs, and very regularly, very consistently, it just doubles. If it's like a item that you end up with a lot of, all the magic ash, all the sharp fangs or whatever, it just doubles what you originally got. If it's like one of those items that you're supposed to sell for money or one of the rarer items, it just tiers it up, like one tier. Like so much so, it's so predictable that I've been making notes so that I could update the quest guide that we have on our site with like the hard mode rewards, where before I finish the quest, I just kind of guess what the hard mode reward's going to be. Like this will tier up, this will just be doubled, blah, blah, blah. And I've been right like 95% of the time. So it's really, instead of being like this real big shakeup, it's quite predictable, which is not like terrible. It's just kind of like, oh man, like there was a lot of potential here. And I don't know if they quite realized it in terms of really being a big shakeup. They do shift around enemy positioning a fair bit, and early in the game it's pretty obvious. Like you'll be in one of the very first missions with Sid and there'll be a griffin, and like, oh, of course you didn't see griffins at this point in the game. Like that's very different. But the further you get into the game, I'm kind of like, was that there before? I'm fighting like later in the game you fight all the Akashic, right? And it's like, oh, there's an Akashic airman in this group. I know I fought those before. Was it here before? I don't quite remember. So it kind of loses its like meaning when early in the game you can do a lot of interesting things by shifting around the enemy positioning, but late in the game when all the enemies, like there's a lot of enemy reuse in Final Fantasy 16 or recolors, or you fight the same enemy only it's the Akashic version or the Orcish version or whatever, and it's like, okay, I'm sure they're still like tweaking it, but it's less apparent, less obvious, and you still end up with like thousands of resources that it does do a tiny bit of a better job where upgrading weapons as you like go through in the Final Fantasy mode might take like 300 or 400 of a resource, which sounds like a lot, but you're being rewarded so many in the hard mode where you've got like literally 6,000 magic ash. And I'm like, oh, okay, this upgrade required 400 of it. I guess that's a little bit of a dent.
I'm going to ask you, was it, you know how like trash mobs that you fight in Final Fantasy 16, do they ever make those fights ever more interesting in any way? Because you could just use Ignition and just kill off any trash mob.
Hello, fellow Ignition enjoyer.
So no, I will once you find like your slate of abilities that works, just like in the base game, you just kind of repeat that all the way, because there's no like elemental weaknesses, there's no like there's no dominant like weapon triangle or whatever in terms like that. So for trash mobs, by the end of the original playthrough and just starting on square one of my repeat playthrough, I would just do Ignition, which kind of balls up the enemies. I would do Diamond Dust, which basically does a good chunk of damage all around you. I would do the Titan like final ability, which does like a big sweeping earth attack because it hits a lot of enemies. And usually by then I just have to wipe out some stragglers, like, and that's it. For a boss, I do the Odin Zanset's Kutsin, I can't pronounce it right. Basically, its inherent ability. I would do the Judgment Bolt from Rama because it's a big single target damage, and I just do that every single time. You get so much gil, even in the base game already, but even in the hard mode, where before any hunt, before any boss fight, you can just cap out on potions very, very cheaply. To buy 8 potions and 5 high potions and 4 strength tonics is like 7,000 gil, and you end up with like 500,000. Oof. And so like what that means is if you're a big action game aficionado, and the game actually has a system for this, I forget if you have to do it in hard mode or not, but like you can earn marks or some sort of item for defeating a boss with no damage, and I believe you actually have to do that for 1 trophy. So like there are marks for defeating late game bosses without taking damage. So like people who like really want to like practice their technique and get, there's a high skill ceiling in Final Fantasy 16, no doubt about that. But it's just not necessary to reach it, because I me being smooth brain, poor action game player, can just be like, I've got 13 potions on hand. I can just be very, very sloppy. I can just put on the semi-prime mode, whatever, where you hit both sticks, which kind of gives you like the poise
HP
or whatever. The HP recovery and the poise. You don't get hit stunned. And I'll just be like, I will kill this boss before he kills me because I have a shit ton of potions that are basically free to replenish whenever I want. So the game just affords you to be sloppy. And you could just say, well, Brian, that's your choice. You can not do that. I'm like, yeah, sure I can, but I don't like I don't derive that sort of inherent enjoyment out of the combat system. Maybe I should or could, but I just haven't.
Was it? Have you tried the Ultra Maniac arcade mode?
No, I haven't done much of the arcade mode things, but I did go to the I forget what it's called, but the tablet that allows you to replay stages and also do the arcade mode. So once you're in the Final Fantasy mode playthrough, you can play through the stages on that Final Fantasy difficulty, but also on the next tier up, the New Game Plus Ultimate difficulty. So no, I haven't dabbled in that, and I'm sure all my sloppy technique that flies in Final Fantasy mode does not fly there. I'm sure.
I heard that mode is like it's for those very players that find it challenging, because apparently in the leaderboards there's like barely 100 people made it to the leaderboards in those things, because apparently it's like super hard, because it's like you had to do everything like perfect or else they just fuck up the run.
Yeah, maybe I wish that New Game Plus mode, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, one thing that was so compelling about it was frustrating but in a good way, was that the item use limitation, like you had to be like super careful with how you spent your MP, and how you had like this attrition where you couldn't just spam high potions all the way through. But in Final Fantasy 16's New Game Plus mode, you still have access to all your same potions. They've been if you do the side quests to improve their potency, that carries through, and that can kind of like is a crutch to lean on easily. So I almost kind of feel like that was taken away from me because I don't have like the wherewithal to withhold it myself. If I'm able to use 5 high potions per battle, I'm going to do it. Like if I need to.
Who cares? Just fucking use it,
Yeah, but if the game said you do not get these, like, oh, I guess I got to figure out how to make do. Like I've got a hand tied behind my back. And that's what Final Fantasy VII Remake did, and I appreciated it for it. So a little bit underwhelmed with Final Fantasy mode, but it's like I'm compelled enough to see it through to the end, even though maybe I'm just dumb and the platinum trophy is calling out to me. I will say though that as I've replayed through some of the cutscenes again, I'm skipping a few of the cutscenes as I go through because it's my second playthrough, of course, but some of them I'm rewatching. And there are like, this game does have some high highs that when you're early on in the game. So this is an early game sequence. This is like within the first third, an early game sequence where Clive is fighting basically a manifestation of himself. It's Ifrit, but marked as like the infernal icon or whatever. It's basically where he admits and realizes and commits his resolve that he is Ifrit, the dominant of fire, etc. And all the icons have their own unique battle theme, and I think the one that is the most memorable by far on the soundtrack is Ifrit's. It's called like Find the Flame or Fight the Flame. And like Clive very almost nonchalantly says like, I understand now, I realize what you are not Ifrit, I am. And then that's when you first get full access to it. And it's one of those things where I was like pumping my fist. I was like, this is a bit silly, this is a bit schlocky, but hell yeah, I'm enjoying this. Like, go Clive, fuck him up. Things like that. So like those moments like really did, like even on a repeat playthrough, the spectacle is fun to watch. I was like rooting for the protagonist at that point, which is always a good thing to be doing. I will say that on a repeat playthrough, some of the icon fights, like Titan and one of the later ones, they're like 30-minute long cutscenes, and the spectacle is still fun, but they do drag out a little bit.
I think the Titan lost fight dragged out because it's like it takes forever to let you like hit him, sort of thing.
Yeah. As cool as the boss fights were, that was one of those things I was kind of worried about coming out of the preview, where it's like, man, this is really neat in the spectacle, but it kind of gets in the way of the gameplay. And even when I enjoyed like the Titan fight and the Bahamut fight in like the full game, that was never really alleviated.
I think the only fights I enjoyed were like the Hugo fights, not the Titan loss, but the actual Hugo fight and the Barnabas fight.
Mhm.
And yeah,
I think those are like the best boss fights in like hand-to-hand combat, or not like hand-to-hand, but you know what I mean, like a human form.
yeah,
combat,
like
right?
the human form like bosses are way more compelling than the cutscene icon fights. Which
Well,
is
I forget if it was
it's one of those things like I sort of expected like as the game was coming out, it's like, oh yeah, it turned out exactly what I thought it'd be. All right.
I forget if it was Cullen or someone else during that podcast basically said like the spectacle is fun to witness the first time. It really is. At least in my opinion. But like you were saying, maybe on Final Fantasy mode they shortcut you through the icon fights or whatever, or just make it a cutscene because once you've experienced it once, there's really not enough gameplay there to make it meaningful a second time. But nope, you just do it the second time, which is like, all right, I did it once before, I can do it again. Not a big deal, but it's not compelling. Like fighting Titan is not interesting. It's fun, but it's not interesting. I will say that Adam was actually watching me do a hard mode fight against one of the not super late game bosses, maybe 60% of the way through. You fight Barnabas's like side person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and in the initial playthrough of the game, I barely remembered his fight because I just like blew through it. And then in the hard mode, it was actually fairly challenging. And not only that, like even with my crappy just spam high potions technique, but not only that, but the checkpointing in that fight is actually not generous. A lot of the checkpointing is super generous. Like you'll get a boss down to like 10% HP left, and then you get sloppy and let him kill you or whatever. And then you just spawn and he's got a quarter of his health left and you got your potions back or whatever. You don't get them all back in hard mode, but you get enough back. Like, all right, I can just plow through this. But in that fight, you have to take him down from like 2/3 health all the way to nothing with 2 potions only. That's your checkpoint. I'm like, all right, this is actually a bit of a challenge. This is the first time in hard mode that I actually like felt like, all right, I got to get good, Brian. You can't just be sloppy now. So it turns out I got good, at least for a moment, and was able to win. So that I wish the hard mode was more like that. Like I wish the hard mode was harder, but that's not. I guess that's not a new observation for Final Fantasy 16. So I'm not going to say that that's like some enlightening thing. But and I guess like if I want hard mode to be harder, Brian, go into that go do that ultimate challenge arcadey stuff. Like, all right, maybe I'll poke at it later.
I just feel like the integrity of the game has been diminished by trying to add too many accessibility options. I'm not sure if I offend people by saying something like that, but I feel like.
Well, what do you mean by that? Like, I want to hear like I know like what do you mean by that?
It's like it's like the game didn't need to be made that way. I feel like they should have just made like.
Well, it's all optional and it's literally just accessories. The game wasn't designed that way. It was they made those on top of it.
For what it's worth, I have not equipped any of those timely accessories.
I want to hear like let Chow like finish his thought.
Yeah,
like even like in the main game, it's like it's so easy to the point. It's like they want like everyone to beat this game. It has like no challenge. Even the S rank. Like the S rank hunt challenge doesn't even pose a challenge. Like you could like go in there and you could kill Sorog in your like first try.
I mean, is that really the fault of like having accessibility options though?
Even without accessibility,
is that a more integral game design?
I think it's just like the game design. It's like okay,
then
then
why would you?
But I say like at the same time, you have the accessibility option. Is like it poses zero challenge at all. It's like they want to make sure everyone can clear this game, and now the integrity of the game has been compromised. That's how I see it.
Is it really the integrity of the game if this was their vision for the project?
Well, maybe I don't know. Like I don't know. I see it this way, but
maybe once it comes to PC, like I think Final Fantasy 12 did this. Once Final Fantasy 16 comes to PC and Xbox in a far off land, you'll be able to difficulty select from the beginning. Like you'll be able to do hard mode.
That'd be cool. I would like to just do Final Fantasy mode off the bat next time I play the
I'm thinking Final Fantasy. Go ahead,
I don't want to play. Yeah, I don't want to play like the game again on normal difficulty to get access, and I don't know if I'm willing to boot it up again on PS5. To be honest, maybe I will, but I don't know. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't like
the PS5. I mean, you can always boot it up again. I mean, there is the option to turn off your motion blur now.
I know, but that doesn't really fix the performance of the game.
I mean, you always hated motion blurs in your game.
I always turn off. I turn off depth of field and motion blur if they have toggles immediately.
I will say that, like for motion blur, I think sometimes some subtly applied motion blur can look good. For how it's implemented in Final Fantasy 16 is like 0 to 5. So I think setting it at 1 is okay for me. Giving it a little bit of a blur when you move, but what it was defaulting to is just way too much. But yeah, so I don't want to say like the Final Fantasy mode hasn't really changed my opinion of 16. It was just one of those things where like I was really excited, like man, this could be really really fun and neat. And it's like it's kind of fun and neat, but it didn't really shake things up as much as I was hoping it might. But it is always kind of fun just to replay it with the I've enjoyed more just replaying it with all the powers from the get go. Uh, Including like the powers that you unlock as Ifrit, being able to do like the flame spit in the initial Ifrit battle is kind of interesting, kind of breaks it. So that's always kind of fun, little power fantasy thing, but that's kind of independent of the Final Fantasy mode changes.
So
Yeah.
for the icon fights in Final Fantasy mode, there will be no changes, right? But you get to use
there-
your abilities from the get go, and that makes
You
the
you can use
fights a little
you
bit
can
different.
use a couple abilities from the get go, which makes them a little bit different. I I feel like they hit harder. Like when you're doing the icon fights, depending on the fight, you get like a slate of healing items. They're not called potions; they're called something else. And
Like Scarlet something.
I had to use a few more of those during the fight. So I guess I'm not perfect. I'm not able to zero potion the icon fight. So I did have to use a couple more of those, but they don't feel too different. They might hit like the bosses might hit a little bit harder, but that's kind of it.
I wonder what sort of PC mods are going to come out in the PC release in 20XX. Right? Thinking like,
I am
what
more
PC mod?
curious about the DLC. Okay, it's gonna
Yeah,
be
Will it
Medicine
have
Girl, and
DLC?
she's gonna destroy everybody.
Will it have DLC?
Well, there's a very clear part of the game where there's a very natural DLC potential tease there. I forget if it's been explicitly stated, but it's like if there's DLC, it probably relates to that.
I don't know. I kind of just thought I'm kind of just like okay with just letting it be done.
Yeah, yeah,
I kind
and
of
the
okay with just like a game not having DLC. It's kind of like God of War Ragnarok. It's kind of like dude, like yeah, the game's out. There you go.
I mean,
Like, cool.
I think most mainline FF games are like that. I mean, there's still no DLCs for FF7 unless you count Intergrade with
That's
Yuffie
technically a
chapter.
DLC. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Sorry.
but, you know, this sold a extra port with it included. So does that count? I don't know. Yeah,
That's I got that as a DLC. If you're saying like,
but like if you buy it separately, you know, it's like they don't.
I mean, but you can say that about any game that's like Game of the Year editions, right? It's like, oh, this didn't have DLC because it already have all the DLC bundled into it, so I didn't have to get anything extra. You know,
Okay,
that's the similar logic you're operating on.
but I don't know. I feel like FF16 is almost perfect if some elements was kind of like more.
I don't know. For me, I don't know if like it's not obviously it's not perfect for me. I don't know like if there's like things I would change about it that would like make it perfect. I kind of like I'm okay with it just sitting it, the game as is. It's flawed, but it's I had my fun with it. But it's okay. But it's okay for a game to be flawed too.
And the last game that we have slated here to talk about will kind of tie in naturally to a very kind of big news announcement from the last week. So, and this is something that I am not well versed in, so I will have to lean on. I think Chow, James, or Josh can all equally speak to this, but I'll go with Chow because he put the game here. You've been playing a game called Tsukihime, and I have heard this name a few times, specifically when talking about Melty Blood in the past, but I am not well versed in what Tsukihime is. So you've been playing a game called Tsukihime, A Piece of Blue Glass. Just kind of tee me up. What is this?
This is a remake of Tsukihime. If anyone's familiar with this series, this is like I think it's the first Type Moon visual novel that was sold commercially in Comiket. Is that right, Josh?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay.
This was like back in 2001. I want to say.
Yeah, it kind of became a collector's item in this field because I think if you go to like Japanese pawn shops, they'll have like little poster ads saying they'll pay you like $2,000 to buy the copy. That's from the pawn shop itself or some shit like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of become like a collector's item because people like after they read the story, they'll be like, "Holy shit, this story is fucking amazing!" And then later on, it kind of like
Yeah, it's important to contextualize like the era this came out in, like early aughts, like at the turn of the century, like the state of like there were still like big visual novels, like if you consider like Tokimeki Memorial or Tokimeki Memorial, like in that field, you kind of had that sort of like rom-com style visual novels. They were all kind of like not to say that they were all like samey, but they were all very standard type stories, kind of like more down to earth. sort of like daily life stories, right? When
There'll
it
be
comes to
dating
visual
sims,
novels.
but this is like a battle, horror, stuff like that in there, which is a totally different kind of theme from the standard visual novels you play. I mean, I'm also a Tokimeki Mario expert. You can ask me about that too if we ever get the chance. Dating sim expert.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like one of the bigger turn of the century visual novels. Like I think it was just like in 2000. I think Never Seven came out in 2000, and that was like a big one back then too. But it wasn't like battle focused. It wasn't like very action focused. But it was still a very interesting visual narrative. Um, when that came out in Japan. So yeah, Tsukihime was when that like no one really knew what to expect, because no one really knew of Type Moon back then, and to kind of tee it up, like
So
Tsukihime is almost like a shonen, almost like a shonen.
So from my distant perspective, when I hear Tsukihime and Type Moon, my thing is like this is either their first game or was their breakout game. Are you think either of those statements are true?
I think it was their first and sort of breakout. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd say breakout is like the right term because like it's still like I don't know what the standards were of like what was commercially successful in that era. I'll
Yeah,
admit,
it's
like
true. Yeah. What does breakout mean, relatively
It's
Yeah.
kind of
speaking?
it's kind of hard to say like success either because the author only
I
prints
would-
a certain amount of copy and he only sells whatever is at Comic Con. They're always sold out. It's like we only print so much, so
yeah.
it's kind of like
Like I mean, it's a success in the form of like, hey, it continued with like a fan disc later on, or the plus disc. Then you had the sequel Skagetsu Toya, which also came out in 2001. So I mean, if you're judging by like it did well enough to continue going on, then yes, it was a successful game.
Mhm.
In terms of numbers, I don't know, but that's getting besides the point. It's like it's both Type Moon's first like commercially sold commercially sold is like a weird thing because once again it's like a comic cat, so like it's not like to the broader public. It's like whoever attended comic cat,
What
but
what
it was
what does Comiket mean? Sorry.
it's like
I
it's like a Anime Expo, but it's like offers that brings their own work. It's usually like a dojin, to sell in that place. So most people usually just go there. It happens
yeah.
like every 2 months or something. Is
It,
it every 2 months?
no, it's like every or not. It's like doesn't it happen like 2 times a year?
Okay, 2 times a year then. I think
Yeah,
there's a one in August coming, but it's like the biggest
Summer and
event.
winter.
yeah,
And
summer
winter
and winter.
content.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like the biggest
So
event coming
yeah,
in.
so it stands for comic market, and it's like it's like it's basically a whole Chow said, it's basically what you would expect from an anime expo, but amplified. Like it's also like one of the biggest places like for cosplay meetups in Japan, fan gatherings. One of the biggest things about it is like independent authors, illustrators. Basically, it's basically like an open market for people to sell what they have. Obviously, that they apply for like space there, but that it's basically a grand haven for like independent creators to publicly sell what they're cooking up legally in Japan.
Like just
Whether
a
whether
random
whether it be
example,
games, whether it be dojins or manga, whether it be like fan art, um, and so
it'll be
forth.
there.
So it sounds like a supercharged artist alley of like a Western convention.
Almost, yeah,
Yes.
almost.
I think last year there was like this really funny event where like I think the offer of Bochi, I think she had a panel there, and they were worried that she would clog up all of it, so they like had to hide her in the corner or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stories. Yeah, it's always a new thing every year. It's always fun and it's always crazy. Like a ritual that what do you call this? A ritual that my friends and I do about Comic Cat is like we'll watch like the game creator trailers that come out of Comic Cat. It's like usually when a Comic Cat happens, there's usually like a reel of like indie games being showcased at the Comic Cat, and my friends and I like to watch these reels um that are that's happening there because like you'll see a lot of like very niche independent Japanese games that they don't showcase anywhere else. Like one of the earliest showings of Asta Libra was there. Um, a lot of like what's another game? I'm trying to think. It was just Astley was like it was an easy example. There's other examples down the line. There's
Probably
a
like
shitload
stuff
of
made by
probably.
Ladybug, maybe like
Yeah,
the Konosuba video game that they made.
yeah.
Stuff like
Yes.
that. But anyways, we're probably getting a little too off topic with Comic Con.
No,
So
I think this context is good. Like I'm
it's
glad you guys are going into it.
But anyways, I'm just gonna say, like, I am playing the remake. I'm not playing the original game. A Piece of Blue Glass is a remake of Tsukihime. So, how this remake adaptation goes, it only remakes 2 of the routes out of the 5 possible routes from the original games. I know people will be like, "Oh, you're only remaking half the games," and like FF7 remake. But the original games has been expanded so much to the point that I see it's kind of fair that they divide it as 2 games, which is the other game's not. We have no idea when the second game's coming out that covers the other 3 routes. So
Yeah, like people get thrown off when they say when people say there's like the first part of the Tsukihime remake, because when Tsukihime first came out, it was like people kind of it also had that divide in the community where like there's the routes called the near side, which are the first like the 2 routes are the main 2 protagonists, Arcuid and Seal, and then you had the far side, which had Hisui, Kohaku, Akiha, and that's it.
yeah, apparently they're adding 1 more route for that. Apparently, that's why I
Yeah,
heard.
well, we'll see. Who knows? They keep
But
teasing it, but
yeah,
it's
they
kind
keep
of
teasing it.
it's
But
kind of a deal with the community. But
I,
like what you said, like with the remake, the reason they divided it up like this, only adapting the near side content, is because the length of the Arcuate and Seal routes is like as you said, is like has been really greatly expanded, and like the amount of like there's a much more greater in depth explanation of like things that are going on in the game, and also added a lot of like new elements in the remake as well. So like new characters, new plot developments. Seal's route is pretty much like brand new because there was a lot of like complaints of how Seal's route went in the original. Like they kind of took it in a new direction. That was like it was a lot more it made it for a more interesting experience and arguably more faithful to the character and the spirit of like that route.
let's go with like some of the premise of the storyline first too.
Yeah.
So we'll start with what really happens in this game. So at the beginning of the game, you have this main character who gets into this accident, and then he just wakes up and he starts to see like these like blood red lines all over the world, and for some reason he just like these lines he could see it perfectly, and he could just probably dig his fingernail to it and draw the line of where he sees it. It will destroy that object completely. It will kill it, break it. It could be anything, and this is giving him like tremendous headaches, and he just couldn't really deal with it anymore. And then he meets the main character of Witch on the Holy Night. She's here. This is like 20 years later or something like that. This is like way more far in the future from where Witch on the Holy Night like comes off. But anyway, he meets the main character from there, Alco, and she gives him a pair of glasses that will prevent him to see these lines so he doesn't get these headaches anymore. And then we fast forward to the modern era. So here's like already we have some changes from the original novel. I mean, the novel's now changed to adapt to the modern times. These guys have Twitter now, unlike the original one. They have smartphones, Like the stories have been reworked for the modern era, I guess you could say. So maybe not everything lines up with the original as much.
So I have to ask though, like, so I have been made generally aware of Witch of the Holy Night as we've covered it on this podcast. I did not realize they shared at least a character, because that would have come out after Tsukihime, right?
Yes.
So yeah, but like
it was
But
the
the
first thing
chronology.
that Natsu. It was the first thing that Natsu wrote.
Yeah, but it was never like the original draft of like Witch on the Holy Night was never publicly sold and made available. He passed it around to friends, but it was never publicly sold. So if you really want to go back the chronology, like the original draft of Witch of the Holy Night was
Preceded
first like
Tsukihime. Okay,
yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
All right, continue.
So from here on, it'll talk about his daily school life, and from here you can already like notice like all the difference from the original already. There will be a new character that's introduced. Her name is Noelle, and if you play the fighting game, it already spoils her identity. The Melty Blood fighting game, the remake Lumina.
Mhm.
It's like you already know that she is, whatever group that she's part of, right? So if you play the video game, the fighting game first, and you come to here, it's like, oh, spoilers. It's like that's who she is. This teacher that comes in, and lot of changes like already there. But I think one of the biggest changes in the remake is now that there is full voice acting, because the original is a very low budget novel, so obviously there's no voice acting. And if there was, it would be in the fighting game where the voice actor is just playing like a few lines and so it's really hard to get like a full judge of their characters. So from here, it's like it's fully voiced. Obviously, they have different voice casts from the original, so maybe some people aren't happy about that. But the remake uses mostly like the Witch from Mercury cast. If you think about it, the main characters lose a friend. There's always a lose a friend in every single Type Moon project. I don't know why the main character always has one of those. But he's was it? He's Shattuck from Gundam, and even like the main villain is Ghoul from Gundam. So we have all the Gundam cast in this visual novel. Even like a character you'll meet later on.
I mean, he's voiced by Kana Ichinose.
Yeah. So yeah, it's nothing but like the Gundam cast here. But anyways, was it? The story kind of goes on kind of normal, like daily school life. Main character has a cool senpai, which is a seal. Obviously, we don't know much about her yet until you play the game later. But how the story goes is that for some reason he meets upon a girl named Artsia. For some reason, it triggers like a bloodlust into him after meeting her, and it causes him to go all the way to her apartment and fucking slice her up and kill her. And
There's like not really a story because it's kind of like the setup for the game. It is shocking when you see it.
yeah, I think that's how the original game starts out. You start with this, but now there's a build up from the school life before it gets to this point. Is that how it goes? If you remember,
I
Josh?
think, yeah, like it was much like this game kind of pads it out a bit more, but like in the original, it came about pretty quickly.
But so, anyways, main character goes to her apartment and slice her up like to freaking bits, and it's a very bloody scene. Okay,
It's a very graphic game. Like it's really not for the faint of heart. Like this was rated like Zero Z in Japan. This is,
yeah,
like,
I
the
don't even
highest
know how they
rated
got
game.
away without censors in the Japanese version, because that
Yeah.
would put the censor boards in there. But anyways, he sliced her up to bits, and then he walk home, and he's like, "Did I?" It's like, was that murder? Was that a dream? I don't recall. Anyways, goes to school next day, and that girl that he sliced up is just right there in the school parking lot, and she basically kind of like blackmails him into like saying, "Hey, you just cut me up. Thanks to you, I don't know what kind of killing you did to me, but it's like it fucked my body up really bad trying to regenerate myself."
She literally there's like even a spray for it. She's literally holding herself together with duct tape.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
basically, she is basically the avatar, or well, maybe that's a little bit too spoiler. But anyway, she's basically saying that she's a vampire, a good vampire. But because the main character sliced it up so bad because he could see those lines, it kind of like caused her to like unable to regenerate normally. So she basically lost like 90% of her power. So she's not in her complete state, and she needs time to recovery. But the reason why she comes to I forgot what town they're living in, but she basically comes all the way to Japan because she's trying to hunt down this evil vampire that's doing several murders in town, and because the main character destroyed her body and that she doesn't have her full powers, she needs the help of the main character to help hunt down this vampire, and that's basically the concept of this story. I think from here, it's like depending on how it goes, you had to beat the game once with Arcuid before you could unlock Seal's route, and it kind of like diverges somewhere during this vampire hunt, if I recall. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it. I was gonna say anything.
I was gonna say like, since half the game is missing, there's certain elements that feels kind of like unexplained.
It's not really
because-
missing.
Well, you know what I mean,
It's
right?
not really
Like, there's
missing.
certain parts of the game, it's like because you don't have the other free routes, so it feels like it's a plot hole if you're a newcomer, in my opinion. Because there's like one part, it's like, oh yeah, main character says, "I shouldn't piss off my sister. Maybe I should go apologize to her." And you decided to not to apologize to her. You just die at school for no reason. You just have a heart attack. It's like, what's the plot hole? It's like, that sounds like a plot hole, right? Because why would you have a heart attack all of a sudden? You go to school because you didn't apologize to your sister, right?
Okay.
Like, obviously, if you play the original.
I'll say anything. Yeah.
I know, but I'm saying if you play the original, it's like, yeah, there's context for that. But now if you play the remake, because you don't have the other free routes, it's like, why do I have a heart attack in school because I didn't apologize to my sister?
Have they explicitly said that the remake will have a second part that covers the other routes, or is that kind of speculative?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not a speculation. It's literally like after you complete this remake, it just straight up has like a teaser for the next part.
Yeah, it even has a title already. So I mean, it's guaranteed that it's in the version.
Okay,
Who knows when it's gonna come out? But theoretically, it's before I die, I guess.
Yeah, if the offer is not getting stuck doing Fate Grand Order, it might have been out already. But without Fate Grand Order,
you know what pays the bills? Fate Go. You know what doesn't pay the bills? It's the Tsukihime remake.
You know what? I have confidence it won't take that much longer because most of the assets, theoretically, are already done.
I mean, that was the same argument we had with Tears of the Kingdom, and that didn't work out. Very good.
I mean, Tears of the Kingdom came out in a timely manner. Let me put you like in perspective like this. They teased remake like what 9 years ago, maybe 10.
Okay.
Yeah, and then but after their first teaser, we never fucking heard from this remake again, and it became a fucking meme to fucking just mention it after a certain amount of years, and then it popped out of nowhere again. But it was a very long wait for the remake to even materialize.
It was a meme in the fandom community. I remember my friends like, "Oh, do we think we're gonna get Final Fantasy VII remake first, or do we think we get Tsukihime remake first?" It just became like a meme.
Yeah, it was the stuff of like it became a myth, a legend at a certain. So I mean, maybe I won't really get into it too much, more because that is like the setup for the game, and I don't want to like spoil it for people. But the long and short of it is like in a very stupid but honestly Type Moon way for this game. This game was announced for English localization at the Fate Grand Order Anime Expo 2023 panel at the very end of it. So the thing that happened with the live stream of this event was they went over like the time allotted so much that like the Anime Expo staff, whatever, just thought that like, oh, this is the end of the panel, and just kind of pieced out when they were like kind of signing off like the Japanese guests and everything, that they thought it was the end of the panel. So they just cut the live stream of the panel, so no one actually knew this was announced aside from people there attending and taking pictures of like the announcement like slide of it. And even then, it took a while for people to like really to really get convinced, because like it's like one of those almost impossible localizations that like people were like, are they just fucking with us? Are people being serious? Like people didn't actually know for a good while whether like this announcement was real or not if they weren't actually there at the panel. So after like a day or so, the Aniplex USA Twitter finally like formally announced like its existence. Like, yes, we're doing it.
So there was a couple day gap where all we had was, we know you all watched the stream. This wasn't shown on stream, but here's a photo. I promise it was shown.
Yeah,
but then the official publisher was mum about it. So it's like, what? Like, was it announced?
Pretty much. Like I had to like dig really deep into like some sources to be like, okay, well, was this actually like there? And like, yeah, it was there. Like, okay, I'm trusting you, but if this is fake, I'm gonna kill you in Minecraft.
So yeah, sort of deal. So that ties into one of our headlines for this week, and that is that the Tsukihime remake has been officially announced for an English localization for 2024. So Chow, of course, is playing the
Twitch.
Yeah, Chow, of course, is playing the Japanese release, which explains what you've just heard.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really it's really awesome. It's really great that like we're finally here where they're getting like somewhat regular releases, localizations of like recent Type Moon visual novels. Witch on the Holy Night. I think they released like sales figures of Witch on the Holy Night. Like they've topped like 150,000, which is pretty decent for like a visual like a modern visual novel, because modern visual novels don't really sell that high for which sucks, but it is what it is. That's kind of the market.
150K is still a great number.
Yeah, it's still a great number
I
nonetheless.
mean, there's a company that I follow that sells visual novels, and they could barely make like 5K. So 150K is like a total different level.
Yeah, and then Tsukihime like did like I think at least 300K in Japan, so it was like already, and that was like celebrated. That's like on a whole other level. I don't know if it reached 500K, maybe it did.
Like,
But,
I think for a series to be like really profitable, it's more like from cross media products, like the movie that they have in store for the Witch on the Holy Night that they're going to make with
Yeah.
Ufotable, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
So I have to ask
So-
one more like dumb question as an outsider.
yes,
So why was this announced at the Fate Grand Order event? Like, how are those two properties tied?
Type Moon.
So,
Type
okay,
Moon.
so Type Moon did the Fate novels, which is the
so
mobile game,
here-
which also did
here's-
Tsukihime A,
Yeah.
which also does Holy Night.
Yeah, so here's basically the how the economy of things are, okay? The localization of Witch on the Holy Night and the Tsukihime remake would not be possible without the financial success of the Fate Grand Order mobile game. That's the truth of it. The ones funding it, Aniplex, are the ones who are also running the game Fate Grand Order. So like the financial success, the monetary success of Fate Grand Order's global version is pretty much funding the remake. Is pretty much funding these localizations, because like Type Moon, like there's one way to speak to a company. You speak to them with money, and Type Moon sees the money that the Fate Grand Order game is making, its global version is making. So they're like, oh shit, do we have a market there? Like, and then that's what compels them to like go out in this venture with the team of the Fate Grand Order global version, and be like, hey, is it possible to release our products over there? And and this is not just English alone. They like with Witch on the Holy Night, they also localized it in Chinese as well. And of course, China, very, very big market for that. So that's what really compels them to go on about this. So for better or worse, whether people want to admit it or not, the healthy financial success of Fate Go is what's making these localization projects possible.
What do we call that? Tail wagging the dog?
I have no idea what that's calling it.
That's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah, but
So,
but
James,
hey,
did you attend
people
this?
benefit. But people benefit. Like everyone benefits from this, right? Because if you're a fan of like Type Moon visual novels, of course you should be happy. You have a way to like, support them, with the official release.
You
I-
can
I
support
didn't-
them.
I didn't attend that panel because it was a Fate Go panel and I don't play Fate
Yep.
Go.
Yeah, but I'm saying you can support them to make more visual novels by buying that guaranteed SSR ticket in Grand Order.
Jesus.
You could do
But
that.
yeah,
Joe.
but yes, like the main downside is you wanted to like, if you were there at the panel to just see this announcement, you have to sit through like almost like an hour and a half of Fate Go stuff to get to this announcement too. Like even then, like I like to kind of paint a picture of like how me and probably a good chunk of people in the community like this localization of Tsukihime remake was so far down on our list that like there were other projects that were more likely to be shown. We thought they were just going to be like you're going to show a new thing for Fate Samurai Remnant at the panel, like they might announce something new there. That was probably the most likely, and then the second most likely was re-showing the Fate Extra remake again. And even then, if that wasn't it, what's the next most likely thing after that? Maybe show like a new trailer for the Witch on the Holy Night movie there. That probably was more likely than this localization announcement. Like just to paint a picture, like the localization announcement of Tsukihime remake in the West was like it was so far down like my expectations. I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Like it's just one of those projects. It's like it just feels like it was like impossible,
Well,
to-
from what I heard, is like even just like the two parts. I mean, like the remake, like just from the two routes alone, they say it has more words than the Lord of the Rings trilogy combined. That's what they said.
Gosh.
That's what the fan base
Yeah.
said. So that's why
Yeah,
it's like, oh yeah, good luck translating that and hope for a profit. It's like
Yeah. and hopefully they kind of that hopefully like assuming this is like sort of like a similar team to what they had in Witch on the Holy Knight. Hopefully they have like the pipeline in place to like kind of minimize the amount of typos in that, because Witch on the Holy Knight, for being by virtue kind of like the first one of these, like it was kind of like a rough start. Like it did launch with typos. I don't know if they ever patched them or not, to be honest. But it definitely did have its fair share of typos in it, and sort of like weird English scripting, like in the way that they translated some stuff, and like it wasn't like necessarily like absolutely detrimental to like the core of the story, but it kind of sucks that it was there. And hopefully, they minimize those when Tsukihime remake launches sometime next year in the West, and that'd be really cool to see more of these like projects be more of a regular thing. I would like that a lot, and it's kind of it's a big learning process for all of us, right? Because it's something that's just we thought it was impossible. Now the impossible's happening, and we should try to make the most out of it.
I feel like I'm pulling at Adam here. As soon as you start playing a game and it's Japanese, and then it's like, oh, it's like here's the localization announcement. Now you can stop playing it. It's like tell us what is some projects that you would play and just hope that there's a remake or a localization coming.
Yeah, a lot. Chaos Legion remake or remaster, huh? Where's
Chaos Legion. Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's a title I haven't heard this long.
that? But I mean, it's also one of those things that's like we're so used to like it's so weird for people to be like, wow, it took this long. It's like, dude, like simultaneous localization is like has been like a new phenomena, like, and people already feel spoiled by it. People like I feel like that's all like for me, it's like if like these localizations ever happen, like that's like kind of like a blessing. Like, hey, it's cool that it's happening. Sure, it's maybe coming like later than expected, but it's cool that it's happening like eventually, and like that's set in stone. And then like a good chunk of like feedback is like, oh, why did it take 3 years, and all that sort of stuff. It's like, you might have died like way back when it took like how many years for like even like RPGs to come out, like 5 years after the fact.
Look, I joined a fan translation.
Like when it used to be that bad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Trails fans. Actually, no, I'm not.
No, but I'm saying like I joined like a fan translation project and I tried like doing it by myself. It's a lot of work just for like a few like lines and shit. It's like, and to have like a whole scale project like that, it's like it's gonna take a lot of time. So people just need to know it's like try be in their shoes for once.
So that was basically, I think, all of the conversation around the Tsukihime remake, the announcement over at Anime Expo, and of course, Chow playing through the Japanese version. Were you playing because it was announced for the West, or were you playing just independent of that?
I was so bored out of my mind. I ran out of stuff to do, so I just played that because I was trying to get something to fill in before the Final Fantasy 16 comes in. And now that now there's a English localization, I don't need to play the Japanese version.
Look, Chow. Okay, it's to the that Chow and I were so grateful for the Tsukihime remake localization announcement that I came up with this, and then I sent it on to Chow, and then like Chow and I were so grateful about the Tsukihime remake localization announcement, and like I kind of came up with this idea, and I spread it to Chow, and because he's as broken as me, he's like, "Oh, that's a good idea." I fucking reinstalled Fate Go, and I re-upped my account because I stopped all my account info after so many years because I don't know why. It's just I don't know why. So I reinstalled that, and since they have they're celebrating their 6th anniversary of the global version, they have a guaranteed SSR campaign going, but you can only do it with paid gacha currency. So I reinstalled that. I paid money for the gacha currency, just enough to do that guaranteed SSR pool, just because I just wanted to show a little support for like, and a thank you for them bringing Tsukihime remake to the West. That's like how grateful I am, and I just want, and I know this is one way to show your support for that decision. And then when Chow heard that, he's like, "Oh yeah, I should do that." And sure enough, him and I, here we are.
Damn.
$15 less.
No, it's $25 less for me. Fucking
Oh yeah,
Canadian
he's in
currency
Canada.
suck.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah,
Well, it's 25 Canadian dollars is the same as 15.
it's like 9 cents in US.
Yeah, something like that.
It's like, damn. You know, I hate this game. I always tell people how much I hate it. Fake Rain Out as a game. It's like the most piece of shit game I ever played in my life. I know people will fucking kill me when they hear those words, but
I
I
mean,
hate
you're
the
not
game.
wrong, but look, even then, you were able to overcome that hatred in your heart for the game, just to say thank you in a small way.
Yes, that's how broken we are.
Oh,
So before we move on to any other like announcements from this week, which there's not too many, I just kind of wanted to wrap around with James about just like kind of the rest of his experience with Anime Expo, basically coming straight off, maybe not straight off, but not soon after like all the other late June events like Summer Games Fest and all the other different publisher events he went to. Went right straight into Anime Expo. How was your time, James?
Busy, very busy. So obviously got a couple of previews up of stuff I played at the show. Granblue Fantasy Relink is a real video game.
oh yeah.
Wild. Yeah.
What do you mean? How real is it?
I got to play the demo twice.
Are you sure you were playing a game, or were you watching a movie that was simulating your movements?
Nah, it was definitely a game, and it was a pretty good one too. Like,
Oh, yeah?
actually, yeah, I'm excited to see the full game whenever they say it's coming this year. I'm not sure if I believe that yet, but I could see it happening because at least what they had at Anime Expo felt polished enough. It felt like a finished video game. So,
Okay, you've written about it on the site, but I just want to touch back with you. Like, just give us like kind of like what your initial impressions when you like. How does it play? Who did you play with? Like, what does the game feel like?
so it's very funny how we've known about this game for so long, and it took it took so long for me to realize that it's based. I called it like Monster Hunter, but realistically, the better comparison point would be this is
Wild Hearts.
well more like Phantasy Star Online.
I was being silly, but yeah.
Yeah, though the combat, even like the way that each character has a very different, like distinct move set with a distinct play style, does remind me more of like Monster Hunter. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm excited to play more. I am not a Granblue fan, so
Did they have it set up as like because it's 4-player, right? Multiplayer. Like, did they have? Or was it all single player in the demo?
It was all single player, but the way that the booth was set up, they didn't say as much, but you got the impression that their original plan was for it to be a co-op sessions. Because they had like, I believe 12 units set up, but they were like sequestered into groups of 4. So I would not be shocked if their original intention was it was going to be like co-op sessions of 4 people, and they just weren't able to get it to work.
That's unfortunate, but
If they couldn't get it to work, does that mean? I don't know. Is this release really coming this year?
No. It could just be a convention thing. Like, I also tried the Samba de Amigo demo at Sega's booth, and that game, oh buddy, that was not a good experience for that because the tracking on the right Joy-Con was just struggling, like absolutely struggling with all the like interference going on the exhibit hall.
Someone called Miyamoto.
But yeah, it's just one of those things. It happens when you have so many people in such a like tight like area with so much electronics. Shit just happens. Happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, Relink is fun. Like, I guess to give an example of how different some of the characters can play, the 2 characters I tried were Siegfried and Catalina.
Yeah, Catalina.
Okay. So the way that, let's start with Siegfried. So he's like timing based in the sense that he has like a normal combo that you can then finish off with like a normal square combo that you can finish off with like triangle. But if you time your button inputs for square perfectly, he'll get like a red aura around him, which will increase the damage for that attack. And if you can chain those like perfect inputs, you'll get access to an additional super powerful finisher that just does a ton of damage. So it's like that's one thing he has that's pretty cool. There's a whole gimmick where it's like every like action RPG these days has a stagger bar. Like it's just something people do, and it works. It makes sense. So there's a number of different like combat features that kind of tie into it. Like there's this thing where it's like when any of the players in a party or any of like the party members use an SBA, I think that's what the
Yeah,
abbreviation.
Skybound art.
Yeah, an SBA, Skybound art. There's a chance to link it to another one. So if another party member uses a Skybound art afterwards, and then like you can chain up to 4 times for like a full burst. There's also another thing where there's link attacks where you can kind of I didn't quite get the nuances of how you actually activate them, but you'll every so often you'll get a prompt where you can like do a link attack, and if you every party member has done a link attack like following up on someone's like skill, then it basically creates like a Bayonetta style witch time where like enemies slow down but the party members stay at the same speed, so for a certain amount of time you can kind of like get a buff in the sense that everything else is slower, so you're dealing more damage that way.
Oh, that's cool. So there's actually like co-op mechanics that like you
Yeah,
can, like
yeah.
you're actually interacting with the people that you're playing if you're playing with other people.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious on how the co-op would play, because I want
Yeah.
to play this with
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah,
And
me
like
too.
I said,
It's the co-op that I don't like is like if you're like all playing together but you're not interacting with each other. It feels like you're just like your own separate like
yeah,
you're just all doing your separate thing. I kind of like playing together with people and like if the mechanics allow it.
How dare you?
I think
no,
doing the chain burst thing would be pretty hard to do with like a co-op, right? I mean, it would be like trying to sync up all your supers together, trying just like the mobile game in a way.
yeah,
Good.
but yeah, it's a lot of fun. I guess to talk about the other character I play, Catalina, completely different. Basically, she has her like obviously she has her own like combos with finishers, but the way she works is that whenever you land a finisher with like triangle, it will build up her Aries gauge, and when it maxes out, for I'm not sure if it's like a certain number of attacks or if it's a like time frame, her attacks will like be buffed, including her Skybound art. So there's like a sort of metagaming aspect of it where it's like you kind of want to make sure that you save your like maxing out your Aries gauge until you can fully like capitalize on it,
Mm-hmm.
while also still like accounting for the fact that obviously you're going to do more damage if you do those finishers. So you don't just want to be spamming nothing but like square combos the entire time. So it's like a bit of a resource management thing. That's just like 2 different characters with 2 entirely different like play styles for how you want to use them. There's like reading some of the info like before I actually got up to the demo station, I saw there was like a character where it's like a charge character. There's a zoner. There's one where it's like you have to like reload things every so often. It's interesting. Like every character is like obviously it's all on the same framework for the game, but the way that they actually like I said, it's like Monster Hunter where it's like it's the same game fundamentally, but the way that you like tackle it is different depending on who you decide to use as your like main.
In the demo, was it like a limited selection of characters, or could you pick like from the dozen or so that have been announced?
There were. I think you got to, except for Fairy, you got to choose. Well, I don't remember. There was a
All right,
decent
no
selection.
worries.
There was like at least like 7 or 8. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then that was the announcement from Anime Expo that they kept for this showcase, is that they did announce that Fairy is a playable character, and let me see if I can figure out what that brings the total cast up to. It's a little over a dozen right now, officially announced.
Is that a good or
But-
bad thing?
yeah,
Cal,
yeah,
that
yeah.
Fairy was
Who's
announced?
Fairy? Is Fairy good or bad?
Fairy is a very popular character in the Granblue series. She's this ghost that you meet in this island that she basically worried that if she leaves the island, she would like disappear. So this whole storyline is that you're trying to get her to leave the island with you, and then she finally comes to terms with that. And yeah, she's you basically find out she's the person's grandmother in the
Okay.
storyline. Yeah, she's the ghost or not like grandmother, but grand aunt. Let's just say that she's somebody's aunt in the storyline, and you'll know who it would be if you play it. It's pretty obvious who it is, but they never she never find out that that character is his grandnephew though. So, but anyways, she's this ghost that trying to come to terms with leaving that island, and later, but yeah, she's very popular. She used her pets, like her ghost pets, to attack. She has like a pet dog, and there's like a little like bubbly kind of spirit, and there's a third one. I forgot what the third one was, but she has 3 pets, and I'm sure if you play the fighting game, were you a fairy player?
Hell no, dude. I hated fighting fairy though. Jesus Christ.
She kind of reminds me of Dalzine, but way more scummier.
Yeah. Okay, are you a fairy maid in Relink?
How would I be? I haven't even played the game. I don't.
I mean, I don't know. You might have a favorite character on the Relink cast. They're like, I'm gonna main them.
You know what? They don't have the characters I want to play in Relink. They don't have my angels, which is never gonna come.
Well, they said they had like a little mini Q&A, and one of the questions that they like sidestepped answered was like, the question was like, will the game be a complete experience, or will it continue to get content updates like a live service game? And they're like, we're working hard to make the game a full package, including a story that wraps up nicely. We plan future support for players who want to get the most out of the game, including epic battles and all the surrounding content. So I don't know if that means they're gonna introduce 2 characters or not.
That sounds written by AI. I don't trust it.
But, okay, so if there was the current roster, I would probably just use Naramaya. That's who I would use, right? Because she's always been like a favorite character of mine in Granblue. But like certain characters that I really like in the story, they just don't kind of work gameplay wise. Because in the mobile game, it's a turn-based. They can just do whatever, right? I mean, one of the strongest character you could use in Granblue, he just sits on a chair.
Dang, dude, that tells me.
Yeah, and literally they call that character "man on chair."
It looks like, according to the main website, they're up to like 18 playable characters or so. So I knew it was more than a dozen, but quite a bit more. So, because a couple weeks ago they announced Zeta and Vasaraga. A few weeks before that, they announced Armaya, and then now Fairy.
So they didn't reveal a release date at the Anime Expo, but they said development is near completion and more info to come in August. So stay tuned. So we'll hear about it again next month and see if are they going to announce a release date next month?
Hear me, side games. If you put Helio and Malio in this game, I will buy you 10 copies and buy every staff member a copy of this game.
Oh God! Okay, we're holding you to that. We're holding you to that. Okay, we're actually like this is on public record, so
this is like 10 gifts. There's no way in hell they would put twins as a playable character.
All right, you say so, but
famous last words.
I know. Okay, Chow, are they announcing a release date next month? Yes or no?
No.
No, okay.
This is a side games always. It's like, hey, we have more story chapters to include. It's like, oh, sorry, we couldn't make it last time. There was just some technical difficulties. It'll be like,
is the more info on August? Do they have like a summer Granblue thing happening next month?
I think it's happening somewhere within this week. I think. Or,
okay,
they're not.
I thought they were like aligning it with like another Granblue event sort of deal.
There's definitely a summer stream. You had to buy tickets in advance, and yeah, the tickets were already like sold around April.
Are they live streaming this event?
The summer one, they usually do. I mean, a lot of people like to go to these events because you get like all kinds of cool merch. Speaking of merchandises, anybody? Okay, James, did they sell Dragalia Lost merchandise at Anime Expo?
So
I didn't. I was too busy to go looking for that shit.
Okay, are they selling merch for a fucking game they shut down like 2 years ago?
My friend was like, "Find me some Dragalia Lost merchandise."
You had your chance. They that window was come and gone. Yeah.
Now we never know.
So, anyways, Moving on from Granblue, I did also play Fate Samurai Remnant.
Okay, all right.
I looked at the game. Is it a Muso? Is it not a Muso? What is it? Tell me.
It's not a Muso.
Thank God.
Yeah, I mean, you're telling me you looked at the gameplay, but you were still wondering if it was a Muso.
Okay,
Chow,
okay,
you can
first-
look at the gameplay and tell it's not a Muso.
First, okay, let's define, because different people have different definitions of what a Muso is to
No,
them.
I did not look at the trailer. I just looked at the name Omega
What,
Force.
what is a Muso to you, Chad? Because for some people, a Muso to them is like the standard structure of a map of like one versus many soldiers and grabbing command outposts to eventually go beat the big bad of the stage. That is like probably by an outpost. That's for some people. That's what a Muso is for them. For some people, a Muso it's a third-person action game that has square action strings or attack strings into a triangle combo ender, and that's what a Muso is to them. So
I treat it as both.
So you treat it as both, but if it's one or the other, it's not a Muso.
Let's see. I would stick more closer to the first one. It's more like you're just a one-man army fighting a million of these soldiers that are like completely brainless, and it just feels like it's a button spamming all over the place.
Okay, James, is it a Muso by Chow's definition?
No.
Okay, what is Fate Samurai Remnant? How does it play?
It's an action RPG. It does have that thing where it's like the standard like Omega Force combat, where it's like square, triangle for the most part.
Okay.
But it does have a thing where the main character, Yori, has access to eventually up to 5 separate gameplay styles. You can switch between at basically any time. And then there's like a meter where you can switch to Saber, who then has like just like their own unique like combat style, and then there's like all this these like special attacks. Like one thing that's really cool is they're really like focusing on that like relationship between like master and servant. Like one of the things in the demo that I saw, like, so basically the way the demo worked is it was a quest where you had to basically help a moneylender get his money back from basically deadbeats, and for each of the 3 people that you confront, there's like a different thing that Saber has to do to basically deal with it. One of them is the money itself was hidden up in a high up place, but there's no ladder. So what they do is they actually like boost you up into the air, and you land on top of this like kind of tower to get it. And the game itself, at the same time as that happening, you unlocked this skill that you can use in combat. That's basically like a combat skill that kind of mimics that like that action that you did outside of combat. Sort of stuff like that, where it's like there's these moves where pretty much all of the main skills are something that Saber does, but a lot of them are actually a combination of Saber and Iori like working together, which is fascinating. It's really like a combat system in the game. Like the gameplay is really focused on that like partnership, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because usually, like how Fate depicts like these relationship between master and servants, like masters are usually at the back and like as a supporting sort of role, and like the servants are usually like kind of like duking it out because they're all powerful and stuff. But having it be more like an intimate cooperative sort of style gives it like a new flavor and new opportunities to like kind of express that relationship.
Yeah, it's really neat because like obviously like Iori is no slouch. She is a very competent swordsman. But then when you get the bar filled that lets you switch to Saber, it kind of like puts in perspective where it's like, yeah, Iori's a badass, but holy fucking shit.
Yeah, so then Saber just fucking wipes everything. It's just like, yeah, I'm fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's like I really like the way that they handled that. And again, it was a very short demo. It was about 15 minutes, but I had a lot of fun with it. One thing I especially appreciate that's not really a gameplay element. Well, 2 things. One, I love the charcoal like colored style that the portraits have. Like it's got like a bit of graininess to it. And I'm not sure if it comes across from like the streams or anything, but
I don't
playing
think
in
it
person,
does. So like, but I'm willing to believe you on that. But,
yeah, it
yeah.
looks great. There's a really neat thing where in the town, at least that the demo takes place in, there's a lot of like cats and dogs, and you can pet them, and Saber will pet them, and there's
Oh
like a
yeah.
QTE where it's like you just keep spamming the button, and if you successfully do it, you get healed.
What the fuck? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Finally,
yeah.
they're making petting feel meaningful in a video game.
Yeah, and you could even feel the cat's purr through the dual sense.
Oh,
So anyway,
that's cool.
but yeah, short demo, had a lot of fun with it though. It's really neat. It's like Omega Force has been really releasing a lot of stuff lately. Like they did Wild Hearts like obviously earlier in the year, and that's in a state now where I'd say that it's worth picking up if you like Monster Hunter. So it's like it's really neat to see them like not just do stereotypical like Musou games, seeing them do something that's a bit different. Even if this one is obviously more in line, it's almost like Persona 5 Strikers in the sense that it's very clearly built on top of a vague Musou like framework, even if the game itself is very much something different.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I've heard a lot of positive feedback on that demo that people have gotten, and like it's sounding more and more promising as like as you know, it's great that they had a playable build there and just like ready to go. And I kind of hope they kind of just like release this demo publicly. I really want to get my hands on it. I'm very excited. And I think like at the end of the month they're gonna announce a new servant for that game too, as far like during an FGO event. So I'll have more news on that in the next few weeks. So it looks cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Were there any other highlights from your time at Anime Expo, or just general impressions of the event itself?
Well, I've got a few interviews that are going to be going up sometime this weekend. Hopefully, sometime this weekend. One of them has to be looked. One of the stipulations is that the company involved had to like look over the finished interview and then send it back, which is like, that's annoying. But well, it was an in-person interview, so I'm willing to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one, there was no embargo for it, so I can just say it. I interviewed the vice president of CyberConnect 2 again. It's been 4 years and like since the first time I interviewed him at Anime Expo 2019. So lots of has changed, obviously. So that should be up sometime this weekend.
Yeah, one of the last things you checked out at the Anime Expo was the CyberConnect 2 panel. How was that?
It was neat. It's such a shame that it was on the last day. Like I don't think it would have been a full house regardless, but it was.
It's pretty empty, yeah, because that's how it is for like last day of Anime Expo stuff. It's rough if you have last day because this year it fell on a holiday. It fell on July 4th, so by virtue, a lot of people have other plans. So I know you live tweeted it from the Twitter account. They were like showcasing a lot of like Fuga 2 stuff like in development, stories I imagine, and
yeah,
and also like sort of like when we went to their panel years ago, they were like still recruiting like overseas like from overseas audiences. Like, hey, if you want to work here, we're still looking.
Well, and obviously, once those features go up and those interviews go up, we'll make sure to give them their shout outs once they're available. But really cool that you got a chance to do that. And it sounds like you'll be playing a few other games in the coming weeks. So we'll look forward to those if we manage to get anything from those experiences as well. And then as going into the remaining headlines from the week, most of these are pretty small. The one thing that the last kind of major piece of news here, of course, we've already discussed through a few different weeks, first through a leak and then through the official announcement at the Xbox event back in early June, Persona 3 Reload. So we talked about this in a few different contexts. The main update this week is that Atlus has shared what they've titled their gameplay reveal trailer. Of course, we've seen footage of the game in its announcement trailer, which had initially leaked on its Instagram. The main bit here that most people are latching onto for this gameplay reveal trailer is that it's the first real like look in at the new English cast. There's a decent amount of voice work here to kind of take a listen to. And I have not played the original Persona 3, but I do know what some of the characters sound like because I'm familiar with the original voice cast. But it seems like my impression has been is that the Persona 3 Reload, a lot of people seem to be jiving with the English cast as they were presented in this trailer.
Yeah, I watched the panel when it was being live streamed, and the new English voice cast is fantastic. I think that they have a lot of great people on it. On the panel, they had Heather Gonzalez, who voices Yukari Takeba, Alejandro Sab, who voices Akihiko, Susie Young, who voices Fuka, Zeno Robinson does Junpei, Alex Lee does the protagonist, and Allegra Clark for Mitsuru, and they all had them, on that panel talking about their time of the game, how they their reactions when they got the offer, because a lot of them are big Persona fans and have a lot of are very passionate about Persona 3 and kind of trying to live up and potentially surpass what's been done before, try to give their own unique take on the characters without necessarily remaking them, so to speak, but kind of living up to the spirit of their character and performing some of the iconic lines like the stupe fucking voice from the original, which was they performed. It was great. It was a great all around, and I'm really happy that they have this new voice cast, kind of breathing new life into these characters and giving it their own interpretation of the character. They all seem very very good.
I think they all sound better. I think the only downgrade might be Akihiko, because
I
the
think it's hard to
original.
live up to. I think
Yeah, that's basically the original is just too high of a bar to beat.
yeah,
That's
I
the
think
problem.
I think he's like I'd have to hear more of it, but obviously he's getting there for sure, and I think he can definitely live up to it.
Everybody else sounds better. Even was it Mitsuru? I know people love the original VA Terra Plat, but you couldn't do the French. So
And Allegra's got it down. She's
yes, so that's already upgrade.
And speaking of that, I did see something where there was some misinformation saying like, well, they couldn't recast Tara Platt because she doesn't work with Atlas anymore because they didn't accredit her one time. And then she went on her Twitter and said, no, I love working with Atlas. Like, don't believe everything you read on the internet sort of thing. So sounds like they just wanted to have a different cast go in a different direction. Doesn't have any judgment about the
Yeah.
original cast. So
Yeah,
don't believe everything
yeah.
you
It's cool.
read
It's
on the
cool that
internet.
the remake is going this direction. It's like, hey, everything's brand new. Let's go for it. And I respect that a lot. And they showed off the artwork for some of the remaining at the announcement you only got to see the artwork for the protagonists, Yukari and Junpei. Then they showed the official artwork remake artwork for Fuka, Akihiko, and Mitsuru, and they all look fantastic. I mean, it's shaping up. It's shaping up.
Mhm.
Where's the Switch port?
Doesn't exist. Maybe in the far future, but
Are
right
people
now,
people still coping for that after
yes,
Nintendo
absolutely.
Direct came and went?
You never, yeah. There's stuff. I mean, I feel for them, but there's other platforms you can get this on too. And if you have a Steam Deck, play it on that too.
So we'll go into a little bit of the minor headlines here to kind of wrap things out. One of the October releases that was announced in the big summer deluge of news was the new Marvelous RPG that was announced during the Nintendo Direct, Silent Hope. The Marvelous and Exceed have have showcased the anime opening for the game. This is the RPG that takes place in it's both the Story of Seasons and the Rune Factory universe. I hope I have that right. I think I misspoke before when I said it had a cow from the Rune Factory series. It wasn't from the Rune Factory series, it was from Story of Seasons series. So I messed that up. But
Oh no,
yeah, it's kind of landing at a good spot, a little bit of I don't want to say lower budget, but like a smaller scale specified scope RPG landing in October. Has a fun, well drawn anime opening that Marvelous has shared on their YouTube channel.
it's a very anime opening. That's like when you think of an anime opening, that's the opening you think of in terms of choreography and all sorts of stuff. It's a fun opening. I don't know what the make of the game. It's like I probably have to see for myself, if I'll like it or not. I don't know. It seems neat, but
Josh, are you ever gonna play Rune Factory 4?
I will eventually. I will before I perish, probably.
Well, something else.
Why wouldn't I? I mean, my good friend Chow like gifted it to me, so I
Well,
have to.
you have to perish before we hear about Tsukihime Remake Part 2, apparently. Didn't we establish that?
That's
Yeah.
no. I'm hoping I don't perish before that game comes out. I mean, if
There we
you're
go.
hoping I perish before I do that,
No, I'm not hoping for
we
it.
need to talk.
You know what the meme is, right? People said that if Natsu couldn't do it, they'll make a Natsu AI to finish his novels.
Oh God, no, it's okay. I mean, oh my God, I don't know what I want to. A Nasu AI sounds nightmarish, like that because that's that's like Unchained Nasu. You never want Nasu Unchained. You want at least one supervisor to be like, dude, come on, dude.
Also at Anime Expo, I don't know if James attended this because he would have already seen it earlier in the month. The upcoming RPG Sandland. This is the based on the Akira Toriyama one-shot manga. So during Anime Expo, we got a tiny bit of additional gameplay footage showing some like vehicle gameplay. And in addition to this, they said that the game will also have a presence at San Diego with a San Diego Comic-Con with a hands-on demo. And they also mentioned a movie announcement. I don't know if they meant like opening movie.
No. The
No.
movie was already announced. They said that the premiere of it would be at Comic-Con.
Okay,
Yeah.
the premiere. There you go.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
the Sandland project is always a multimedia thing. So they first
Right.
like the announcement of the film came before the game announcement, like like months before.
So the premiere will be at San Diego Comic-Con along with a demo of the game.
Yeah. They like the two vehicles they showed off were nice. Like it's like the tank and the jump bot. The jump bot reminded me of like something from like Steambot Chronicles, and I'm like, hell yeah.
They've really kind of kicked off the marketing of this game pretty darn quick. 2 months ago,
Yeah.
we didn't know it existed, and now we're like, it's going on to its third like convention showcase and allowing people to go hands on. So that's pretty neat that it's been able to ramp up so quickly.
I think they're banking on like kind of building up this early support. So like if people get really hooked onto the film, then they're like, hey, yeah, we have a repertoire of like game footage available for you if you really dug the movie.
I mean, it makes sense because like Dragon Ball's popular, Dragon Quest's popular. It's like Akira Toriyama stuff is just popular. So it's like, well, if we play our cards right here, we can really kind of bank off that.
Why wasn't Sandland popular then?
Because it came out and was only a manga.
That's true.
A couple release dates here into the late summer, early fall timeframe. A game called Space Cat Tactics will be launching on July 24th for PC. It is a tactical game in space where you play as a cat. Surprise, surprise. I like for this the release trailer for this. It has like some Mass Effect-esque, like really dramatic music, and some like FTL sort of like gameplay, more isometric and RTS looking than FTL did. But it's, seems like a fun little quirky game that's coming out before the end of the month. So willing to give it a bit of a shout out here. It looks like it'll also be a limited. I hate using the phrase like budget title, but it'll release for $15. So looks like a pretty fun price for a pretty like quirky game.
Yeah, there's some like aspects that make it look like FTL, like rooms on fire, and you're like, oh god, what do I do? The quintessential FTL experience.
When you pause in FTL, look around your ship for like 10 minutes, thinking if there's any way out of a situation before realizing that no, you're fucked.
In September, we'll get the Mon-yu official Western localization. This came out back in 2021 in Japan. Is this the Experience RPG? Which one is this? This is not the one based on food.
It's the Experience RPG with art by Mota, I think is the name, who did Seventh Dragon. Very like chibi art. And then it's like a dungeon crawler, but it has like a score system of some sort. I don't know the details, but like you go through a floor, and depending on like how well you play, you get better rewards or not. So that seems to be the twist of this one.
It also might have the longest English title of a video game.
Yeah, it very much has the like light novel isekai type title. I'm not going to read it because that's what they want. I'm stubborn. I read it. I read it last time
once before.
Yeah.
So.
Mon-yu. Adam, are you gonna play this? I think you or James.
I don't really like this. I don't care for this art style so much, but I might play it.
It's a
The
dungeon
thing is,
RPG.
it's coming out in like smack dab of middle of September, which is
Yeah,
like,
nothing
on.
else coming out that time. Yeah.
It's coming out a day before my birthday.
Well, happy early birthday.
Yeah, but Mon-yu, thank you.
And then we have an announcement of a PC RPG coming out next year, Wanderer's Sigil, which is a turn-based roguelike RPG, will be launching on PC in 2024 from Polish indie studio Viabo Games.
This one looks pretty cool from the trailer because like as you're wandering this overworld, it's like all divided up like hexagon grids, but like the hexagon grids are going up and down as you're traveling through it. I don't really know what's going on there. It's like when it's popping up like the world, I guess, when it's populating the world. It kind of has like that terraforming sort of like flow to it.
Mm-hmm. What else do we got? A couple Neptunia related announcements here at the end. When did these sneak in? I'll go through them. Neptunia Game Maker R Evolution will be releasing in the West in 2024. It is coming out in Japan pretty soon on August 10th, but it'll be coming West next year.
Are you excited?
I have no idea what this is.
Damn.
There's
Are
like I
you
feel
excited, Josh?
Being a seasoned veteran, I feel like it's for the new generation to consume now. These games are no longer for me, probably.
I mean, isn't
Unless
your
they're
name
fun.
HDK or
Or high
hyperdimension?
definition. High definition. What are you talking about?
No way, it's hyperdimension now.
What the fuck?
And then Neptunia Sisters versus Sisters will be releasing on Xbox Series and Xbox One in 2024. And I saw some interesting speculation on this release because seeing a Neptunia game release on Xbox, I think, is initially seems kind of like unexpected, and it has no knowledge or announcement related to any Game Pass release, which makes it seem like that this is just speculative, that it's an Idea Factory decision to release on Xbox and not something that's being like pushed by Microsoft. I don't know if there's any truth to that or if there's any other details that have come out of that, but it just seems like they're kind of testing the waters to see if an Xbox release can do well for this game, despite not being on Game Pass.
So whenever we tweet game news especially about like Japanese games that don't come to Xbox, which is most of them, there's always like a small cabal of people that are like, bring it to Xbox, no matter what it is.
And then there's the one guy. The one guy
is going to Xbox. He just says that every time. But yeah, I actually did see some people who were legitimately excited about this. I don't know if they're just like Xbox fans who are just like, I don't know what Neptunia is, but it's coming to Xbox. I gotta play it.
Hell yeah.
Like there were some people who were excited.
I don't know if it's like genuine or are they fucking joking. It's hard to tell.
I mean, I hope it's
sorry.
Who clamor for Xbox JRPGs. I have to imagine it was genuine.
Support Neptunia on Xbox if you want Xbox RPGs.
It's probably
oh my god, that has to be the podcast title.
It's probably worth mentioning that this Sisters versus Sisters game, it came out earlier this year in English on PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and PC, which was sort of interesting that actually that PC port was actually simultaneous, because usually with Idea Factory it's not. But in Japan they announced the Switch version, which this is pretty typical, where a Neptunia Switch port comes out later. That version actually hasn't been announced for the West yet. I'm sure it'll come, but Xbox first, I suppose.
You're sure it'll come? What about the version of Rebirth on PlayStation 4 that never came to the West?
Oh yeah.
Wait, I'm lost
we got
now.
the PS5 remake.
Oh, was there a PS4 version
Yeah, there's a PS4 version before that.
I believe you. I believe anything about you say.
That's why the PS5 version of Rebirth had 5 in the title, because it was the 5th re-release of that game.
Oh, God.
I never noticed that.
Because original PS3, Vita, PC, PS4, PS5. That's the 5th one.
Man, this series sucks.
Well, the thing, as someone who is not in this series, what makes it difficult for me to follow is that I can't tell based on the subtitles like what's mainline or what's spin-off, or does mainline even exist anymore, or is it all just spin-off? I don't like that's me being honest. Like I am confused.
After the PS4 game, the Neptunia Victory or whatever, that was the last main line. Everything after that was a spin-off.
So it's
Because
like a Kingdom Hearts syndrome.
because we
Something
have
happens
sister
to-
versus sisters. We had the one
That's a
where with like
spin-off.
Neptunia versus Senran Kagura, which is obviously a
Spin-off.
spin-off. Then there was like the Neptunia RPG, the Neptunia Mobile, and then like versus Sega Hard Girls, and then like
Spin-off.
game. Is this Re-Evolution mainline or also a spin-off?
Spin-off.
Oh, see, okay, so at least my confusion seems like it's
Everything
genuine.
after the mentioned Neptunia Victory on PS4, everything is a spin-off after that. That was the last main line. So that was
All
like
right.
what year? Whatever year that was the last main line. Everything else has been. I don't even know if they care about it. They don't. No one. I don't
still
know.
keep wondering how does Idea Factory to keep having this budget to keep making all these games? And they're like,
I don't know. People keep on buying these games, man.
I don't know. I never
It's
see
like
them in the
Agarus
sales floor.
War. It's like Agarus, dude. It's like that. Like Agarus was the Neptunia before Neptunia happened accidentally.
Well,
Uh-huh.
okay, fine.
What are you willing to accept that these games exist or something? Was that your
Fine.
realization?
And you can do so by supporting them on Xbox now.
Well, okay. What do you want Idea Factory to do? Okay, they have no ideas left. Okay,
Tell them to make a
have two
Def
more.
End. Okay. Tell them to make a Def End request without the gameplay because they suck at gameplay. So just make a visual novel.
Like the two modes of Idea Factory are either Neptunia spin-offs or Otome. Okay, Otome is probably the better choice here, but someone has to look out for the Neptunia fans. It sure isn't going to be me, but someone has to.
Nathan will do it.
The strongest warrior.
Yeah, bless his heart.
Nathan is our strongest Neptunia warrior. Okay.
You're not wrong.
Taking the mantle after Zach.
Someone has to. I'm just imagining Zach doing like the cool like pose, like go on, carry my legacy to Nathan. Oh no! What have you made me think of?
Yeah, peaked.
And I think that covers us for all the headlines this week. So we were able to get quite a bit of discussion out of the Anime Expo announcements and just James's experience there. We're able to go back and discuss some of the other releases from a month ago, in terms of Final Fantasy, and then the recent release of Trails into Reverie. So I'm not exactly sure what'll be on the docket for next month. I think there's a few embargoes that are releasing. We'll see a couple of James's final features and previews that are going up from Anime Expo.
I can say the end of this month is going to be a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. And then, of course, August is going to kick off with Baldur's Gate 3, and then it's not going to slow down. So looking forward to that. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you've listened all the way through to the end and haven't clicked off, please let us know what you're thinking. Give us a rating on the comment on the site page or thumbs up on YouTube. Let us know what we're doing well, what we're not doing well. We love to hear that feedback, whether it's positive or negative. You can find RPG Site on all the social media platforms. As of right now, it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. We will keep an eye on things as they unfold. But as of right now, that's still all true. You can join our Discord by hitting the link at the top of our homepage or going to discord.gg/RPG site. Seems like it's been pretty active lately. So if you're not sure where to find us, or if you're worried about the social media climate shifting too dramatically, just go ahead and join our Discord. That way you'll always know where we're at. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. Thank you all so much for listening. Until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care. We will talk to you all later.